раскат. Вижу твой взгляд, стать многояд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливай лим, поцелуй на шею. Камень трамвай, много назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, стать многояд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливай
You are the courier Lord Kaiser has spoken of. The slaughter begins then.
Вижу твой взгляд, стать многояд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливай лим, поцелуй на шею. Камень трамвай, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, стать многояд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливай лим, поцелуй на шею. Камень трамвай, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, стать многояд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя. Так дайте пацанам посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибают на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливай лим, поцелуй на шею. Камень трамвай, правда назад, черный каскад. Вижу твой взгляд, стать многояд. Мог тебя взять, но ты не моя.
You did good, say.
It's us, man.
Checking expiration dates, my only moderation. From broke in a shade to a billion valuation. Still that skinny pippin', taking Caucasian.
Background to the Attlee-Truman discussions, 1 million people cram New York's Central Park to hear the president outline America's stand on atomic power.
There has been talk about the atomic bomb. We must find the answer to the problems created by the release of atomic energy. Indeed, the highest hope of the American people is that world cooperation for peace will soon reach such a state of perfection that atomic methods of destruction can be definitely and effectively outlawed forever.
Осталось 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 0. Education.
Far beyond normal shipping routes they lie, and until 1952, only pearl fishing boats entered the blue waters and left the cliffs surrounding their shores.
The film record has been heavily censored by the French authorities, but this picture is impressive evidence of the bomb.
Demonstrates the great results of cooperation and the cooperation of education with research. This is another victory.
Emergency alert system capabilities.
This is an emergency action notification.
National Alert and Warning Authorities, in coordination with emergency alert system participants.
My fellow Americans, as you know, our attempts at preventing nuclear war have failed.
Finally, Mars has accepted my sacrifices and unleashes me.
I see you, enemy. I see you, enemy. Enemy! Enemy! You are my enemy! And I swear total resistance to you with everything I've got. Disingenuous, fake, false, broke back, twisted, a defiler, a betrayer, a backstabber, a devil! You will pay. Yeah, you think I don't see your face, scum? You don't think I don't see you? I see you, you understand me? I know what you think of me and my family. I see you right back. You understand that? You understand that? You will fall! You will not bring humanity down! God is going to destroy you!
Thanks for the raid, Jim. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right. I am actually working tonight. There's some stuff I need to get ahead of for tomorrow morning. So I am just going to put on this thing I wanted to kind of listen to. It's actually, what is it? It was Tim Pool and Not So Erudite. But they talk about everything. They talk about, you know, current events, the male loneliness epidemic, Israel, Gaza, Palestine. Ukraine, Russia, they talk about everything. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. Plus, everybody hates the people that are talking, so that should just only fuel you to be more angry at the people that are talking. You know. Catholic, what's up, Sparkle? How you doing? But like I said, there's some things I need to get ahead of for tomorrow morning, so I'm just gonna be kind of just listening to this, semi reacting to it. I did listen to a little bit of it before. It was it's an interesting conversation, but I mean, if you don't know who Not So Erudite is, you know, you're gonna need some context. Do you know Not So Erudite, Sparkle? She was she actually co-hosted a podcast with Destiny for a while, and then the whole Destiny shit hit the fan. So she basically took over the podcast, and she's just, you know, she's a lib. She's a lib. She's a sweat sneak laser, yeah. Exactly. Sorry, I made a video. I made a death ray that can kill you in a fraction of a second. Even if you're not hit with it, you can be blinded from looking at the beam, even indirectly, almost 2 miles away. Oh, who's Styro? What's up, Mida? How you doing? Who is Styro? Is that like a take on Pyro or something, or? Personal hero? Okay. But yeah, like I said, I got some stuff I got to get ahead of for tomorrow morning, so I'm just going to be working and semi-reacting, basically just listening, hoping you guys fucking argue like nutters. You know. He makes weapons of mass destruction on YouTube. He works for the FBA. Oh, wow. Cool. Interesting. That is actually really interesting. I have to check that out. Sophie clicks on whatever. Can't really stomach her speech cadences. She... Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you know, I'd probably say there's probably people out there that I hate their cadence more than her. But, yeah, probably in the same boat with you. Hold on a second. I got my work computer here, and I'm trying to, like, keep the screen down so I'm not doing any letting out my business to the world here. But yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna be doing some work. I got a few things I got to get ahead of for tomorrow morning. Very Libby, like you mentioned, yeah. I mean, the thing is, she's trying to do this thing where she is essentially trying to, you know, make Democrats or liberals kind of Republican coded. Like she wants it to be okay to say like retarded or, you know, like pseudo slurs, like not dropping hard RN bombs and stuff, but she's like, you know, like it should be like we should be like it should be totally okay for us to say things like retarded or whatever because they're getting away with it left and right, so we should be able to do that too. But she's not doing it from an equality standpoint. She's doing it from a standpoint of this is how we're going to compete. This is how we're going to compete in the political marketplace, you know. Yeah, what's up, Bird? Where's Casey? I don't know. Maybe Casey will be here in a little bit. We'll see. We shall see. I wonder if he's going to condemn Cory Booker. I heard some of those going on with him. Did he do an anti-Semitism or? I saw a thumbnail. It might have even been an Asmongold thumbnail. I don't know. The real question is, well, so, you know, is for what happened in Boulder, Colorado, is that something you would ask whether or not he condemns as well? I only briefly heard about what happened, and it seemed like some Molotov cocktails were thrown at an Israel rally or something. He did 99% thing as Elon. Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, really? Interesting. Interesting. All right. Look at that. Look at that. Everybody's favorite person, bro. Look at that. How could you not want to pop some popcorn and watch this with me? After seeing that mug, after seeing that right there. Doesn't that face just make you want to pop some popcorn and hang out with Leggett Lannis Jr. for an hour or two? Oh man, it is Tim Pool, yeah. But this is the episode from the other day where they were talking to Not So Erudite, and they hit on everything. So I heard bits and pieces of it. So I kind of wanted to just do a cozy Sunday rage bait sit down with you guys and get mad at this. That isn't a beanie. That's just an overgrown kippa. Oh man, I knew it. Everybody's favorite guy. But yeah, like I said, I'm working. Stuff I kind of just gotta get in place for tomorrow morning. So we're just gonna cozy on up with this and just hang out. If you don't want to watch Tim Pool, I don't blame you. But this is just something that I can probably just keep on in the background while I'm working and comment on from time to time. Go to Alinea and then watch 10 episodes of Game of Thrones based. Amazing. The thing is, like, I go to Chicago at least once a year. Although I do say, like, I go to Chicago. I used to go to Chicago at least once a year, but now I essentially just fly into Midway, and then my stepdad just picks me up from the airport, and we drive to Indiana. But they used to live downtown. But there are so many places in Chicago I want to eat. Oh man, I have like a bunch of them saved on Google Maps. There's so many places. And I mean, obviously I want to eat at Alinea, but if I only had one trip to Chicago, I think I'd rather knock out, 6 or 7 other places that I know I can eat at, in a short amount of time and like for a reasonable amount of money, and like save Alinea for like a different kind of trip. Buffalo Grove? No, that's where they originally, that's where when they left Florida when I was younger, they moved to Buffalo Grove and they lived there for a very long time. And then once their kids got grown up and moved out of the house, they moved to downtown, and they were living right on Michigan Avenue, I think, or Chicago Avenue. They were living on Chicago Avenue and in like this luxury condo, like 37 floors up, really really nice spot right on the corner. It's right across the street from that famous giant building that you can see from fucking Michigan or whatever. But after a few years of living downtown, they just got after COVID, their property value decreased. There was crime everywhere. The taxes were through the roof, and my stepdad was just like, "I'm out of here." So they moved to like a little quaint little old town in Indiana. Why does the boy with the sad eyes have fans again? What's up, XN? How you doing? I have an Italian place. It's right in the Irving Park Cafe. Chicago Firehouse is like 16, Michigan. And got you. Cool. Yeah, no, I remember you mentioned one of them. The other, was it last night? It was a Italian joint you were talking about. Been to 150 restaurants. Yeah. There's a bunch of places I want to go, but a lot of places I want to go are like places that are kind of like, like, you ever been to Wiener Circle? I want to go to Wiener Circle. I want to go to those kinds of places. I want to go to places that are like quintessentially, Chicago. I want to go to, I've been to, when I was last there, I went to, what was it, Nick and Vinny's or Nick and Vito's, the pizza joint. I went there and it was fucking awesome, man. They just talk shit to you. I know, that's why I want to go, I just want to go check it out. But I went to Nick and Vinny's or Nick and Vito's or whatever it was, where they do the tavern style pizza, that thin crust pizza. That shit is fucking awesome, man. Yeah, it's great. It's great. My stepdad and one of his sons took me there when they brought me back to Chicago to catch a flight from Midway. They brought me there right before I got on the plane, and it was fucking awesome, man. Really, really good. I definitely recommend it. All right, let's get mad. It's time to rage bait. I'm fucking throwing it out there. Rage bait time. Pop your popcorn, boys. All right, we're getting Tim pulled out right now. The Culture War with Tim Pool.
Young men are leaving the left. We've seen numerous reports. Actually, I talked about it quite a bit this morning. There are 2 Gen Zs, Vox claims, because young men are shifting rightward. Older Gen Z still lean a little bit more progressive, but young men are largely moving to Donald Trump.
Kind of amazing you run a political channel and don't have your fill of people talking shit to you. I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. It's not very often. I mean, I don't actively try to piss people off. I'm not making content. I'm a cozy, casual hobbyist of a streamer. I only do this a couple nights a week. So, and I consider myself like just a very boring Republican. You know, I think libertarians are cringe, and I think fucking conservatives are cringe. So I just exist somewhere in between that. But I don't know. Maybe my views are just not like edgy enough to piss people off, or maybe I just don't talk about the things that most people want to talk about. I mean, a lot of people want to just talk about Israel-Palestine all day. Some people want to talk about fucking Russia-Ukraine all day. Some people want to talk about fucking, capital gains tax all day and shit. It's like, none of those fucking subjects interest me at all. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just not, rubbing people the way that they're usually rubbed in other chats. You don't rage bait? What's up, Evan? How you doing? You just hold a mildly right-wing opinion. Probably. Yeah, I think that's right, Evan. Welcome in. How you doing? What's up, Game Boy? Talk a lot of shit towards Lege. It's just when he talks about the social contract. Yeah, exactly. I will say, I do get a lot of shit when I'm not streaming. If I jump into like a Discord and I'm chatting with like Casey or Game Boy or Anok or Maida or Potato or like any of these other people, I probably do catch a fair amount of shit there. It's just like when I'm streaming, I probably don't catch as much because I'm like, I don't get on my stream to fucking, like blow up and make content and go nuts, When I'm on my stream, I'm just like super chill because this, like I said, this is just a hobby to me. But when I've gotten into Discord calls with some other people, we've definitely had some hot back and forths, But yeah, Evan's probably right about that. People complaining about how terrible USAs are on like 2K rig streaming. Yeah. You have a lot of respect from people in our community, mostly because you keep to yourself most of the time, especially when streaming. No major stream debates. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Yeah, Yo, what's up, Conrad? Yo, what's up, Gus? How you doing? Welcome in. We're just about to watch this Tim Pool Not So Erudite situation. Welcome in. Have you watched this yet? Against my will, yeah. Legate is the most respected and reputable streamer in our sphere. Yeah. And yeah, in the graveyard that is lower orbit Twitch poll. Yeah. Yeah. Parts? Okay, gotcha. Welcome in. This stream is like this is a low energy stream for me because I'm actually working on this monitor here. I gotta get ahead of some stuff for some meetings for tomorrow morning. So I'm kind of just listening while I work, basically. But yeah. What need background for League? If you stream normal hours, I never stream normal hours because I work a 9 to 5 and then after that I either like take a nap or I leave my apartment. So like the last thing I want to do the moment I log off my computer is log on to the other computer and start streaming. It's the last thing I want to do. So we'll see. Chill stream, gotcha. Yep. Welcome in, Gus. Welcome in. Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Moving to the right.
The Culture War with Tim Pool.
They're happy to do so. You're also seeing the rise of prominent personalities like Andrew Tate. Despite the fact that many people are critical of his career and how he made his money, young men still seem to like the guy. So what is the phenomenon driving people, younger men particularly, away from the left and into the hands of conservatives We're going to have that debate. So we got a couple of guests joining us tonight to have that. It's not tonight, it's the morning. Joining us this morning.
I will say, even though this is Tim Pool, I do find this topic to be fascinating. Because some people don't think it's happening, I guess. Maybe, what is driving young men into the arms of the right? What is it? I do find this topic fascinating.
Morning and talk about it. Ma'am, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kyla. You can find me everywhere at Not
Play his song, a straight ass. You talk about a Tim Pool song? Oh, man.
So erudite. I do streaming and stuff. I typically talk about gender, so it's a good topic for me.
Oh, gender.
And kind of like socio-cultural commentary.
All right, sir, who are you?
I'm American Nacho. I'm a Christian conservative.
American
husband,
Nacho.
Father. I work full-time supporting my beautiful stay-at-home wife in our 2 recent additions. And I stream video games and politics as more of like a hobby. You could say like a mover and shaker in some of the political communities.
So,
tangential to like Andrew Wilson or something like that.
Right on. To start, I think we're in agreement that young men are moving to the right.
I think if you're denying that, you're just denying data.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vox, at Washington Post, like everybody's bringing it up. I think the question is why, but you agree young men are going rightward. So I guess is there a disagreement on why it's happening, or do we actually agree why it's happening? I mean, what's your view on why young men are basically moving over?
I think as a liberal, I'll be very clear, I am liberal, and I spent the last several months being asked this question by liberals and Democrats. I think the answer is that the left kind of hates and fears masculinity broadly. I think it doesn't like it. And I think you can see that in the fact, I don't know if you know this, the APA, it's the American Psychiatric Association. This year they came out with rules and guides about how to treat men in therapy differently than women, and like tricks and stuff that they need to be aware of, right? And it's like, it shouldn't be like 2025 where we're coming out with this stuff. I think the left has just broadly neglected the male issue because it's been what's the word? Not politically correct to talk about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And what say you, sir? Do you agree with?
I don't know about that. I think it's probably just more of like it's probably just should be looked at more from an opportunist perspective. I think if we're talking about political bodies, the DNC probably just saw more value in speaking to the nuances within the demographics they already own, whether it be LGBTQ or people of color or something like that. There's always like another little identity that you can grab on and bring into the fold. Is it politically incorrect to talk about men? I don't think so. I don't like, are we literally at that point now where it's politically incorrect to talk about men? It's the fact that men have no masculine role models. So anytime one steps up, no matter the ideology, they often flock to it. Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, if you look to the right, you have all kinds of flavors of role models. You have your fucking Red Pill manosphere stuff. You have your Jordan Peterson stuff. You have your Tim Pool. At least Tim Pool talks about this kind of stuff. I mean, like you can. It doesn't matter which one is good or bad. It's just that at least young men have options when they're looking at the right and they're saying, okay, these people are talking about men's issues. This guy's talking about men's issues, and then the DNC scrambles at the last minute to pull white dudes for Harris out of their ass, thinking that's going to work. I mean, I just don't think that's viable. I feel like if the left talked about it, they'd lose a lot of the rad femmes who vote for them. Probably, yeah. Jordan Peterson, as of 2 years ago, not so much now. I mean, he still talks about men's issues and stuff. I mean, I would say like, early 2020s, Jordan Peterson was on fire talking about men's issues, going on tours, having young men come up to him when he's at fucking shows and like, crying their eyes out saying, thank you for telling me to clean my room and all this shit. I mean, that you can pick your flavor, but if you don't even have a flavor on the left if the only flavor on the left is like, Dean Whittier or whatever the fuck, Dean Withers and Parker, if that's all you got on the left, and then you have all these other people on the right, and you're a young man looking for guidance, and you're not sure, like you don't even care about politics, but you are looking for direction as a young man, you just have more options on the right. RFMs make up such a small percentage of voters, and the ideological left as a whole, most of the modern day left is socially conservative. Really? What is that? Oh, I'm curious. I want. All right, Evan, you're gonna have to wrestle with Mike on that one. I'm curious what you got to say about that. Let's go.
With that?
To some degree, yeah. I think men are moving to the right because men are more rational than women. Young men are shifting away because left-wing ideologies are kind of disconnected. They feel kind of disconnected from reality. You know, we're living in a society where, you know, we're having economic stresses, we're having, you know, geopolitical stresses, and men are seeking, you know, pragmatic solutions to like economic and social changes, valuing like free expression and preferring like empowerment over this like collective guilt that seems to be like following us around like a cloud. So
indeed. What would you say to that before I jump in? He said
men are more rational than women.
Yeah, and liberal ideologies are, how did you describe it? Not rational or not?
Yeah, it seems like
disconnected.
It seems like young men are experiencing sort of like a disconnect from like left-wing political narratives. Like it's not like they don't make sense to especially young men and even older men like myself. Like starting a family, I'm looking at what world my young men are going to have to grow up in. What world my children are going to have to grow up in.
Yeah, when I look at young men and young women especially, I think most people are not very rational. I don't really give rational points to most people or most voters in general. I think women are like influenced a lot, whether they like it or not, by things like hormones, right? I think women's like hormonal fluctuation is daily, men's are like monthly. But at the same time, you know, you'll point to like women like crying maybe over something that they shouldn't cry about, or being soft and maybe enabling in an area that they shouldn't be. But then you'll see men like punching holes in walls and like doing crime. And so this argument that like men are just more rational than women, it's like, well, no, like different emotional systems and different arguments appeal to each of these groups because each of these groups are fundamentally self-interested. And I think what's failed on the left is to make any appeal to anything for young men. The left hasn't offered young men anything. There's nothing that...
Not only that, but think about this. Think about every young man that has seen their dad get taken to the absolute fucking cleaners through divorce. I've seen it. I've seen it multiple times. I've seen it twice with just my dad. But then there's also my stepmom is divorced twice. My mom is divorced once. My stepdad is divorced twice. My brother's divorced. Fortunately for my brother, he married very young, and he married his high school sweetheart when he was in the military, and they didn't have much to split up anyway, and they didn't hate each other. So their divorce was actually really fucking, like, if you want to have a divorce, have one like my brother did. He got really lucky. But imagine, like, being young and watching your dad get fucking taken to the absolute cleaners, and now he's living in a fucking studio apartment, barely scraping by, trying to fucking, you know, getting you on the weekends and trying to dish out thousands of dollars to your mom who's going to the fucking beauty salon with your hard-earned money. Imagine that. Imagine like the scale of that. Imagine every young man just not wanting to end up like that.
That would be appealing to a young man when you look at left policy. But there's lots of things that are appealing to young women. And so I think if Democrats want to talk to young men, they have to talk to young men. But I don't think it falls as simply down to like rational versus irrational. I think that's like a flattening of the nuance.
I think that modern liberal orthodoxy is antithetical to masculinity, and that the men who remain on the liberal side are largely what we call, and I quote, this is a biological term, sneaky fuckers. Are y'all familiar with that term?
Yep.
Are you familiar with sneaky fucker?
Lay it out for me.
So in biology, there are some species, there's an example of one fish where there's two different types of males, large and small. The large male earns favor with the females by being strong and powerful.
Oh, yeah.
The sneaky fucker goes in the middle of the night and inseminates the eggs and flees.
Yeah.
And so largely I see what you're saying. And my view is, and obviously not absolute, there's a lot of men who actually are into leftist liberal ideology. I'm just saying I think it's a generality, that an ideology that the orthodoxy focuses on oppressors, who has the power, is going to be antithetical to a man who is seeking to empower himself and become strong. And then what you end up with is among millennials, the data in 2018 was that 70% of millennial women were Democrat, 30% were conservative, and 55% of millennial men were conservative and 45% were Democrat. The data probably changed, but I think you get a large portion of weaker males who find their path towards, I guess, sexual marketplace success in being the male feminist pandering to women, telling them what they want to hear so that they can earn favor, whereas the other guys are defiant dude bros chest bumping. And that's an exaggeration, but that's, you get the idea.
Yeah, I think there's something, so like the sneaky fucker is very fun. In Evo human psych, there's not like a ton of evidence for this as like a mating strategy. It's more like birds that do this. But this idea that I think is actually more true, that I think is more grounded on reality that we're talking about, is this idea that essentially for you to perform well as a man in the liberal space, there has to be a certain level of like castigation you have to do toward masculinity and like a promotion of femininity that's almost exclusive.
This is why we're watching Tim Pool. So Gustix, one thing you'll learn about my stream is that I'm not here for you, okay? You guys are here for me. I love to watch you guys argue in the chat. To me, that's like the funnest thing ever. Which is why I watch the most annoying content possible, because it pisses people off and everybody just argues, and I just have the most hilarious time reading everybody just arguing in the chat. That's why we're watching Tim Pool tonight, because I knew this definitely, Tim Pool always rubs people this way. Always, always, always.
Exclusively performative, right? Especially because as a woman, I wouldn't say liberals are like inherently better at like certain forms of sexism, right? Like there's a lot of times where I feel like just my existence, I just don't get respected as much like at a default, even in liberal spaces. And so what I think happens is there's a lot of performativity. And in the case of on the left, we've had this issue where if you want to be left coded, and by left coded, I mean perform, appear, and feel left. You've got the language, usually some aesthetic, right? I appear more left than I appear right. I've got like a choker on and whatnot. In all these ways, if you want to perform left, you have to do some level of service to femininity. And if you're going to talk about masculinity, you have to caveat and couch it within these.
Also, fair warning too, Gustix, I have like a pretty diverse chat. I have like, sometimes in my chat, I'll have everything from like Marxist-Leninists to Christian nationalists. I don't fucking care, what your political leanings are. I just, just don't put my stream at risk with terms of service or whatever, and then we're good. So you're probably going to come across a bunch of people. You're going to probably come across all kinds of politically motivated people in the chat. Just giving you a heads up there. It's just wrong. Like, if you like animals and watch basic YouTube videos, you come to the same conclusion. I don't know that many outside my friends and then are not all at all anti-Semitic from what I've asked. Okay. The guy yesterday broke terms of service. Who did? Who was breaking terms? Call him out, Evan.
Other things. That's how I kind of view it, which if you're a young man, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, where am I?
Maybe that's a good way to put it. It's just easier to be on the right.
For men?
You don't really have to do a whole lot.
Yeah, and
you could sit around eating chicken wings as long as you're talking about football and you don't say weird leftist things. The right's going to be okay with you.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was wanting to point out too, is that I think that they're moving right because at least the right is listening, or at the very least they're just like cool with it. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, you can just sit on the couch and hang out with the bros a little bit too.
Onion? What did they say? What did Onion say? If you wanted to say why Democrats don't appeal to young men, watch one of their ads directed at men. I mean, I honestly, I haven't seen any ads directed at men by Democrats, but I can only imagine they're like what the ads for the U.S. Army was like before Pete Hegseth got in there. You remember the like the cartoon ads that the Army had, where it was like, some chick where she was like, I grew up with two moms, and one day they told me I would be an amazing U.S. Army soldier. So I wanted to prove them right by being a girl boss and getting in there and doing the work, or whatever it was. If it's anything representative of that, then yeah, it's definitely not going to work. And you could see the stark shift in how important messaging like that is with just looking at recruitment numbers. I mean, I will say like recruitment numbers did start to rise in the latter years of Biden, but I think we're going to see even more of a rise now with Hegseth, who I don't particularly like, but I think he says the right things to the right people to at least get the messaging out there. Couldn't prove it, so I muted him. Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know what Onion did, but, I'll take your word on it. 1 minute. Let's see.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
And I'm man enough. I'm man enough to enjoy.
Oh, I've seen this. Yeah, I remember this one. Yeah, I've definitely seen this.
A barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat. Man enough to cook my steak rare. Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears. That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like. Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse.
I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually.
Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful.
That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
I mean, you know, I don't even think that's a bad video. There's some points that they had they got me with like a little chuckle here and there, but that video is not going to make anybody just stand up and be like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that you could do this and vote Democrat. I didn't know that. I guess I should reconsider my options." That's not. I mean, then that guy's going to go back into fucking TikTok and watch 29 Andrew Tate videos and just like it's just. It's not going to work, Imagine talking about your manliness and using the word full-throated. I need to touch my gun just to make sure I'm still a guy. Yeah. Hot take about the elections. If voting was mandatory, Dems would have won. I don't know. Maybe.
To a degree. When you're disagreeing with right-wingers, they're not going to destroy your lives because you have a disagreement. So you're both maybe on the right, but I'm probably a little more farther right, or you're a little closer to the center. You're not going to be ostracized for this. On the left, you have like a large shift going extreme left, and these people are like tearing down even their own. I think that the Democrat Party and left currently is actually kind of fighting with itself a lot too.
Well, I define wokeness as cult-like adherence to liberal social orthodoxy. And the reason for it is you get a lot of people on the right and they say that wokeness is critical race theory, critical gender theory, Marxist. Well, that's not correct. While that is a large component of liberal orthodoxy, support for Ukraine does not fall into that. People try to shoehorn it in by saying, oh, but Ukraine is the weaker being oppressed by the Russians. And I'm like, that doesn't explain NATO expansionism. NATO expansionism is not Russia is small compared to NATO. NATO is encroaching on Russian space. There's a big debate over that. So the oppressor oppresses and make. Also,
XN, you don't have to hang out full time in Kick Chat if you don't want to. If you want to wrestle with the folks over in Twitch chat, you can go ahead. I appreciate you being in there. I appreciate the XN. I salute you for your report, but if you want to wrestle with the people in the Twitch chat, by all means. I'm not gonna. Twitch users are dumb. Well, I think Twitch is dumb. I'll put it that way. I hate Tim as a moderator. He's so biased. I mean, yeah, he shouldn't be a moderator. Does he claim to be a moderator? If he does, then yeah, that's bad.
Sense there. Islam being the second biggest religion in the world and a strong theocratic, fundamentalist, militaristic religion also doesn't quite make sense. It is the adherence to the modern liberal orthodoxy, which is relatively amorphous. And so I pulled up just this real quick example. The four lights from Star Trek. Are you guys familiar with the four lights?
I'm not.
Star Trek: The Next Generation, Captain Picard. Oh, everybody's not a Trekkie is groaning. Don't care. Captain Picard is captured by an enemy faction. He's brought into a torture room where the enemy commander has four lights above him, and he says, how many lights do you see? And Picard says, 4, and then he gets electrocuted. And he says, you are incorrect. There are 5 lights. And now, how many lights do you see? And Picard says, 4, and he gets electrocuted again. And the whole episode basically finally ends with him screaming in the face of the commander, there are 4 lights, which becomes a cultural meme, especially from among millennials and those who watch The Next Generation grew up with it. The captain refused to bow to a false reality he was being forced to through pain of punishment. That's how I view a lot of younger guys and a lot of people on the right, a lot of post-liberals, former liberals, whatever. The left is demanding you adhere to things that are completely false. Otherwise, they will cause you pain. They will take your job. You will be kicked out of social circles. The right has no such precepts. Now, to be that is a bit as absolute. The right certainly has some, but it is.
Now, I would also put a timeline on this. I think it's really important to look at a timeline. So I was actually watching your conversation with Bill Maher. Bill Maher. How do you pronounce his last name?
Maher, I guess. Maher.
Send it, yeah.
And he pointed out to you something that I think is really important, where he talked about like, well, yeah, the left and the right, when we're talking about it from like 2016 to now, I think I agree broadly with your narrative. I might not use like all the same language. Like I don't call it cult, like I call it religious. I think it's like fundamentally religious in like performance, which not all religions are cults, right? Because like the left isn't making you like abandon your family necessarily. They're making you fight with your family.
Well, I got to pause you there.
They're not making you abandon your family. They're making
prominent left personalities have said, cut off your family. Even on MSNBC, they've said, don't show up to Thanksgiving. Was it Jen Psaki who was like, don't go to Thanksgiving with your family if they support Trump or something? Maybe it wasn't her, but this is MSNBC.
Sure, I imagine that there are.
We saw a wave of this after 2016 when he got elected the first time, which admittedly I wasn't paying as much attention then. And honestly, I followed a little bit more of your kind of line. I actually followed you a lot more in like 2018 because I was also like coming from the left around 2016, getting into politics when I started a family and stuff. You saw a wave of people getting, you know, all this pushback saying not to, just what you're saying, not to talk to your family. All these videos, you know, and then now again you're seeing the same thing on TikTok. Waves of them after the election.
Who's that one?
I stopped talking to my family because
sure, but we don't use
they
like
voted for X.
We have to be really cautious, right? So as somebody who's on the left, right, who is friends with lots of people on the left, grew up fundamentalist right, by the way. I don't cut off anyone in my life. I have lots of conservative family. I would never cut them off. I'm very close to my neighbor who is a dogged libertarian.
Yeah, but the exception doesn't make the rule.
No,
you know, we're talking in general.
This is my argument, right? There are loud, squeaky wheels that we need to do on the left a better job of policing. It is better if the left goes, hold on, that's crazy. Okay, we don't agree with this. The left's problem is that we don't kick out our extreme left, not that the extreme left represents the broad group. The problem with the left, especially my side, is that we're kind of cowardly and soft and status quo. And so we don't speak up to our extreme fringe right, left, which is why like the far left progressives have so much more ability to speak, despite the fact that they're like actual like functional policies are only like pretty weakly represented within the Democratic Party. The Biden-Obama party is the strong party within the Democrat Party.
So how do you define what left means? What does it mean to be on the left?
I mean, it's like spectrumal, right? But like essentially you're probably going to be pro-welfare state. You're probably going to be pro like trans, gay, LGBTQ. So you're going to be like economically and socially left by and large.
So, but you use you use left in the definition. So pro-trans.
Sure. So yeah, when I use left in the definition because I think we know, but like when I say socially left, it's usually like you're chill with gay people getting married. You don't really care if trans people exist.
What does that mean? You don't care if trans people exist?
Like you're probably going to support them transitioning, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Economic left would be welfare state. You're going to be pro-social safety net, and you're probably going to be pro-regulation of the market. Right? These are typically what we view as left policies.
What about, I mean, there are people on the right that are trans themselves, are pro-adults being allowed to trans and do whatever they want. They're pro-welfare state. They're moderate on abortion, but they're still called right.
Well, there's kind of two problems. One is that politics has devolved. I mean, I get called right by a lot of like further left people. I'm obviously not right. So if you want to have, the issue is I can talk to you about the far left and I can talk to you about the liberals and like the space that I'm a part of. And so whichever one you want me to like speak to, I can. In my group, I would say, I'm not sure. You're probably somewhere politically on the spectrum on like moderate, maybe shifting right. I don't know like all of your policies necessarily, but you'd probably be somewhere in the moderate like center space. But performatively, they're going to feel like you were demonstrably right-wing, particularly if your audience is demonstrably right-wing. The way that the far left would view that is that you're far right because they don't even think the Democrat Party is truly left, right?
So let's start here. Like we're talking about young men wanting to adhere to reality. They're tired of being told there are 5 lights when there are 4, and the trans issue is a really great example. It relates to the broader political correctness, but you can't get your average left liberal, I mean both, even a member of Congress, to define woman.
Yeah.
If you're a young guy entering the political space and you see an interaction where a woman says to another woman in Congress, what is a woman? And well, I'm not a biologist. I can't answer that. You're a young guy going, what the fuck?
Sure.
Now, I think for young women, they're saying, I think women are motivated by social hierarchy and social order. Women are subject-oriented on average. Men are object-oriented on average. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think we get this divide. Young men say, that is insane, whereas women say, you're speaking out against the group, against the collective.
Well, and it's a bit of a joke, too, to say, men are more rational. But it is true that men are more pragmatic. They're more based in logic and reason. And women can operate a little more emotionally. And so I think they're in fear of hurting the feelings. Like even, I've had discussions with like close, female friends of mine and we have, children and we're discussing things like this. And they're also afraid of what their children are going to grow up in, what their children are going to be taught because the leaders of society can't even define, what things are based off of what you're saying.
Pure inconsistencies like 10-year-olds can't get tattoos but can get puberty blockers. Right. And so when you ask, like, what's the logic of telling children they can't permanently alter their bodies when they're minors, except in this one instance. Mm-hmm. Additionally, you said that one of the things about being left is you're going to be okay with transition and things like this. Then you have the question from young guys and from people in general, why is this the one DSM-5 disorder that we affirm and the others we don't? And there's no answers for this.
Well, there is an answer. It's because transition seems to reduce suicidality by 60%.
False.
It's not false. This is like repeated on.
Define suicidality.
Suicidality is in attempts.
That's incorrect.
It's not incorrect. This is unquestionable.
Chase, what was the Supreme Court argument from the ACLU? Did you listen to that? Mm-mm. The ACLU's lawyer said, in fact, it does not, to the Supreme Court. And so what we look at is, here's where I'm at. Don't know, don't care about whatever the DSM mental disorder is, be anorexia, bulimia, pica, don't care. What's the treatment? We find that the existing scientific research says that desistance rates, not detransition, desistance, where a child who is trans entering puberty simply desists from being trans, is greater than chance. Some estimates between 65 to 90%. Mm-hmm. Suicidal ideation is around 37 to 40% among people who do transition. That would imply there is a greater possibility to reduce suicidal ideation by not intervening with medical treatment. That's
the other option is actually to affirm the birth given gender. I tried to look up some studies for this, and I don't think there's ever been any studies done where they're specifically on people who have body dysmorphia or trans, ideology or whatever, and think they're another gender and are trying to transition, being given the testosterone if they're a male and estrogen if they're female. But there are studies that have been done that are given to patients who have depression. And I'm pretty sure there's a handful of studies that were double blind where they give them testosterone or estrogen and it decreases their depression rates.
Sure. So this is where I want to go back to this timeline conversation, right? I'm not here interested in defending the crazy left. Most of my career was spent fighting them, right? I fought most of these people most of my career because I believe that if the left wants to represent anything, they need to have a strong back. They need to believe in something and they need to kick out their extremists, right? And I think that the left failed to do that. The issue is that a lot of people are looking at the left and right and they're looking 2016 to now, and they're not looking at, say, 2016 to 1970.
Yeah, but you would consider yourself to be probably in support of that position, right?
Which position?
About, gender affirming care.
It depends on what you mean when you say gender
for children
care.
Specifically.
By and large, I'm pretty skeptical about the process by which we
you would
properly evaluate children.
Generally support it though, right?
If it's managed better right now, I think it's too experimental. I think it's too
right wing.
But you separate yourself from the left, the extreme left, and as a more of a lay person, sort of on the right. I mean, that's extreme left to me.
What I mean,
it's even considering.
I don't even think you've gotten to what I'm saying though. Right? The issue is that we can talk about the far left, and I'm probably just going to agree with you that there's a lot of crazies. The timeline conversation that we need to have is we need to remember what it was like from 1990 to 2016 when the right had a lot of strong cultural war. I remember growing up in a very conservative idea where evolution was viewed as evil and bad and everything. This is an anti-science perspective that was dominant on the right, and it feels like we've forgotten about this. I grew up in a school where parents were advocating to remove any mention of evolution, any mention of adaptations over time. They just wanted to basically cut out a large portion of biological science. And so while I agree that the left won the culture war in 2016, well, they canceled their opponents off of it mostly, and they did a lot of bad stuff, and they went too far. I would just agree with that. The issue is that I'm still fundamentally left because my principles and my policies fall left, and I believe in a party, whatever party it is, that stands up for those things that I value.
Which specific, so outside of the crazy left stuff, what particularly would you look for in a party?
Strong institutions.
What does that mean?
Strong institutions means institutions that are effective, that are power balanced, and are reactive with speed.
What does this mean, like the FBI or the Federal Reserve? Like, what institutions do you mean?
Most of them. So, like, most of the institutions that I think that we've erected are by and large pretty good. I think there's good reason for them, though I don't know all
the FBI.
Sure, but I don't know like all of the history for it. I'm willing to basically grant that I'm not smarter than like 200 years of American institutional development to just assume that I know better than the FBI necessarily, right?
No, I'm not trying to, it's not a gotcha. I mean, like, when you say the institutions, does it mean universities? Does it mean the post?
Universities, healthcare, the three branches of the government, the central banking, the
central banking, wow.
Yeah, the NGO that exists to kind of like counterbalance and third-party check certain things. So when I talk about the institutions, I'm talking broadly about most of the institutions. The CDC,
but I think you recognize many of them grow corrupt over a long period of time, right?
Right. So this would be my counter. On the left, we say strong institutions, and the problem is that I think a lot of them have become rigid. And I don't know if you know much about metalsmithing, but there's this idea. But there's this idea when you're building swords, for example, you need to have a strong sword. It needs to be both flexible and strong. So if it's too hard and not flexible, it'll break, right? And if it's too flexible but not hard enough, it'll bend. And so when I say strong institutions, I mean basically the properly crafted sword. It needs to be flexible enough to react to stuff, which I think proceduralism has killed our flexibility, but it needs to be strong enough to withstand people who might want to attack the Constitution, people who might want to be corrupt, which most people that enter politics are probably somewhat corrupt to some degree, right? It needs to be able to withstand these things with the assumption of what incentive structures do to human nature.
So who did you vote for in 2024?
I'm not American, so.
Oh, you're not American?
No.
Oh, you Canadian?
I'm Canadian.
All these Canadians coming to our country trying to influence our politics.
Yeah,
true.
What
to do.
Okay, who'd you vote for in Canada, Trudeau?
I didn't vote in this last election because I haven't been in the country for like almost 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
before that was Aaron O'Toole, who's a conservative. Before that was NDP.
You voted for a conservative?
Yep, I vote all. In Canada, we don't have this like.
Yeah, you vote for a party, don't you?
I think she's just simply not ready for these conversations, to be honest. She's using rhetoric that relies on them accepting information that comes from said institutions that they already discredit. Yeah, I think a lot of these people that come onto Tim Pool aren't ready. Tim Pool's kind of been like, reaching into Twitch poll and just picking out people. Like, for example, Wick TV went on Tim Pool like a month or two ago, and that was kind of a disaster. They were talking about mostly Russia, Ukraine, and it was not pretty. He pretty much largely got criticized for his appearance there. Who else has been on there recently? Oh, I think like Admiral Gibbs was on there. I think Admiral Gibbs was on there. Like Tim Pool's been like, scraping the bottom. He's just been like Twitch poll fishing, basically, bringing in people. Prime Kai's went on. Wow, yeah, I think I saw that. I think I saw clips of that. Yeah. That's crazy. I think there's nuance. She just lacks the ability to have the conversation. Yeah, I agree.
Well, we have like 6, right? It's less culturally baked in that like if you're a conservative, you're always conservative, forever a conservative. Like most people in Canada will vote like maybe NDP locally. At a provincial level, they might vote like Liberal, and then at a federal level, they might vote like something else, right? Like that's pretty standard in Canada.
So US-wise, you would probably still find yourself aligned with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, theoretically, if I had been able to vote and I was American, I probably would have voted for
This is what I can't understand. I mean, by all means, criticize the Trump administration, whatever, I don't care. The Obama administration, I'm not going to speak to anyone before when I like Bill Clinton. I can say very little about. I was a child, but I can say that Bush sucked and violated the Constitution. Obama sucked, violated the Constitution, and we can go into great detail how. And Joe Biden and his administration was probably the most egregious violation of constitutional norms and our institutions that I've ever seen in my life.
Sure, and then now we have like 2024 Trump, who I would argue is like also violating the Constitution, like pretty openly. And so I guess my question to you would be, I don't really want to participate in any of this. First of all, if I was an American, I'd be voting in my midterms and my primaries and my locals, right? Not just my federal, which most people don't even do. Most people that complain about their politics don't even vote at their primaries, which is how you get the nuance in your own party. If you're mad, like that's what I say to leftists, if you're mad that the Democrats don't represent you, vote in your primaries. If you're not voting in your primaries, you'll never get represented at a federal level. Like, what are you even talking about?
There's a word for this when someone believes in voting to change things that the left uses. I forgot what it was.
Probably a stupid liberal.
It's like it's like votarian, or like it's some word like that, voterist or something. A person who believes that voting will change a system.
I believe in democracy, right? And I think democracy is the best system we've arrived at thus far. Not because I think democracy is a fundamental good, or capitalism. I think that they are two systems that we have created that take incentive structures that almost make people always do bad shit, power, money, greed, and it has, with those incentive structures, made the best country with the most human rights and the most flourishing in all of human history.
But we aren't a democracy.
We are a democracy.
The United States is a constitutional republic with democratically elected representatives.
Do you know why the founders said a constitutional republic? Because a liberal democracy wasn't a term that was invented yet.
Liberal democracy is like a semantic term historically to represent countries that function with some kind of electoral.
So is a constitutional republic, because if you look back at the constitutional republic and what they describe, it later became what we know now as a liberal democracy. The reason that the founding fathers, like Hamilton and Madison, who are the people writing on this in the like original letters, the reason that they explicitly talk about not using the word democracy is because when they think of democracy, they thought of the Greeks, and they're like, well, we don't want some like crazy like just vote by population democracy. We don't like that thing. We want something that is more like essentially what we have now, which is a liberal democracy.
Republicanism.
Yeah.
Various jurisdictions who send an elected representative to go and represent the interests of the area.
Sure. The issue is that like we just do have a democracy. Like we're fundamentally, if in every way we're functioning as a democracy, we're acting as a democracy, we're voting, then like at some point we have to call the duck a duck. Like it feels
Except Congress does not enact policy based on the will of the people. That's a fact. It's usually the will of the wealthy and the elite, which is what the Founding Fathers intended, which is why the 17th Amendment got ratified in the early 1900s, because the original idea of how senators were sent to Congress at the federal level was that your state reps would choose to represent the state. So you would vote for a state rep who would then, in their own council, say, we want our state senator to be that guy over there, and no one had a say in it. So in the early 1900s, they were like, hey, the problem is they're sending cronies, so we're going to change this. And I don't actually agree. I think they did it because it allowed the subversion of state choice, state authority. But the general idea among the Founding Fathers was that we needed, quote, better men to decide for the public, not a democracy.
Right. This is why you have the Electoral College in the first place. This is why I tell people vote in your primaries. But this is a democracy, right? Just because you vote for an elected and then that elected gets to make decisions on your behalf, this is still fundamentally in every way democracy, right? The function of a democracy is that the will of the people transfer their authority and their power to an elect who then speaks for them. And we can talk about whether or not the people who speak for them do a good enough job. You and I would probably agree a lot because I'm very critical of it.
Do you think in the past 100 years, the U.S. government has actually enacted policies at the will of the American people?
By and large, yes.
I think the data shows us that the answer is no, they don't. There was the plutonomy article from Citibank 14 years ago, where Citibank drafted this internal paper to be shared with a bunch of financial interests saying the United States is not a democracy, it is a plutonomy where the wealthy control the political class and the political class enacts the interests of the wealthy elite. I think that's actually fascinating because I would assume the left position is largely that, yeah, politicians don't represent our interests. They represent the lobbyists, the corporations,
It's because you were mixing
complex.
me up with like far left people.
I'm not mixing you up. I'm saying it's interesting that you would assert that when the left liberal, Occupy Wall Street, the moderate, largely view corporations as unduly influencing our political system.
I think most people would agree, though. Like the issue is that this is my issue with leftists too. Just because there is corruption, it doesn't mean that that democracy isn't occurring necessarily. We can definitely say corruption is happening and there's something that needs to be done about it. But essentially my question would be, what's the alternative? Do you want America not to be a democracy?
Well, I guess the issue is how you define the phrase democracy, right?
Do you want to take away people's right to vote?
Again, all people everywhere all the time. Do we want to put certain restrictions on voting? Do we want to open up voting to literally
I'm asking
anybody?
you. I genuinely, I don't know your position.
Right. So when you say, do you want to take away people's right to vote? What's going to happen is there's going to be a semantic manipulation on the left where they say people means everyone. And then what you'll get on the right is something like, they'll reference Starship Troopers, service guarantees citizenship.
Yeah, true,
right, where it's
based.
like, when you allow people who are not citizens to vote, which some jurisdictions are doing, like in California, New York, they're trying, you are going to get a representation of non-citizens. And what are the non-citizens going to vote for? They're going to vote for their families back home. Why wouldn't they? I expect them to vote for their families, right?
Sure. And I would agree that there should be like some limits on who gets to vote, right? This is why I think citizenship is a really good standard by which who gets to vote, right? There's also even a good question like, should expats get to vote? If you haven't been in the country for 30 years, even though you're still a citizen, what's your like...
You pay taxes.
You pay taxes, yeah. Americans do. Expat Americans do. Canadian... Should I be voting as a Canadian if I haven't been in my country for like 20 years because we don't have to pay taxes to Canada? I don't know the answer to this, right? So I'm willing to grant that there should be limitations to who votes. My question to you is still, essentially, are you opposed to America being a democracy?
Again, it depends on what you mean by democracy.
A transfer of the people of power to an elected official who then does their will.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want that to look like?
Not like it looks now, to be completely honest.
That's fine, but what do you want it to look like?
Yeah, like a person goes for the people, has a conversation over what the representative bloc wants to see happen in their various political structures, be it at the state level, local, city, or otherwise.
Sure.
Those individuals go and then enact the will of their voter base and to the best interest they possibly could.
Without the pit stop at the NGOs and the lobbyists and all
Agreed.
that stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And not having luxury steak dinners or being flown on private jets or going on boats and all that stuff.
Sure. Okay. So we should get money out of politics, like by and large. Okay. So I would totally agree with you. Like carry committees are the worst thing ever that happened. And the problem is that now we have a Moloch's game, right? This is the big issue with politics is that when, and this is my biggest criticism of the carry committee, is that essentially just to make sure everyone is aware of like what a carry committee is and stuff like that.
Not aware.
Okay, just want to make sure. And it's fine, you don't need to know esoteric words. It's not a gotcha. So a carry committee is essentially what we call like a super PAC. It's usually going to be a combination of, sometimes it'll be a nonprofit or a charity, a C4 and a C3. And sometimes there'll be some other little fun things thrown in there, but that's essentially what it is. And this combination of things allows infinite donations, some of them, most of them, which can be hidden into who does it because they would be a C3, right? Which means that they're bipartisan. And then they usually are not bipartisan. And this is true on both sides, just so it's clear. Both sides are doing this. So carry committees get introduced. And the problem now is that if you want to run for federal office ever, good luck without a carry committee. You must participate in the evil thing that you despise, because if you don't, you will be limited in how much money you can raise. And the reality is that money does make elections work, which is gross, but how are you going to get your ads out? How are you going to pay for your tour? How are you going to pay for your staffers? How are you going to pay for your flyers, right? So money has to be infused to some degree in a democracy.
There's no way not to do it.
Exactly. And so then this issue goes, okay, well, if everyone, even if they want to play the game, even if we've got Jesus, okay, Jesus comes down and he's going to become a politician, which I would argue he would never do. But say he does.
I'd vote for him.
Jesus, me too. I would vote.
Yeah, me too.
I would vote the fuck for Jesus, okay? The question is, Jesus also will have to have a carry committee. This is the Moloch's game, where essentially once the bad thing is in play, if you don't participate, you don't get to play at all. And so now we have this issue where we already have a bad thing, in this case, just the carry committee, and both sides have to participate. And the issue is now there's no incentive to get rid of it because nobody's going to canvass and like promote themselves on saying I'm anti-carry committee, because if they do, they will get no funding.
So, isn't this kind of part of the problem though? Like if we're trying to figure out why men are leaving the left, we're not able to have a conversation like this with most people on the left, to be honest. The people that, and currently there's no evidence that shows that the Democratic Party is interested in having people like that represent them. The people that they're supporting, the Parkers, the Harry Sissons, the Deans, all that stuff. And then this just recently, they put up that that lady Olivia Giuliani or whatever that was going around on X. There's no evidence that they're even willing to concede on any of their positions.
Let me tell you. So we did a live event for this show, and we're planning a series of live show. That was our pilot. We're trying to figure out how it works. I can tweet who wants to come and debate on the culture war, and on the right, you'll get 500,000 responses. I'll get a text from Charlie Kirk saying, I'd love to find some dates that work. On the left, they say, contact my agent and we'll give you our rates. Then if a few people I'll give credit to, the Krasensteins, as much as, there's contention between our opinions.
They're fun to make fun of.
Absolutely. But I respect that they've come on the show. They've said, let us know when you have dates. We'd love to be a part of the conversation. And I very few people want to do these things. And so that makes it impossible. I think the reason why is the fear that if you defy the orthodoxy, you'll be excommunicated.
Yep, they're right. Dean is fully audience captured. I mean, his friend Harry Sisson
canceled on us.
It's crazy.
I'm sure he did, right?
Yeah, he got scared.
They all do though. That's what I was gonna bring up too in regard to all of them. It's like I think a big problem too is that this new TikTok culture, like you're saying, has them audience captured. And what is the audience on TikTok? TikTok is largely designed for women.
It's got to be left leaning.
It's a lot of female users, more than like any other app, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, anytime I defend feminism, I do well. Anytime I defend men, not so good.
So I mean, these platforms are shaping these young influencers, and then they're terrified to go anywhere without their mute button.
Sure, but there's TikTok is a hell of a problem to get into, right? Because you got to talk about like China and all these other like blah 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 blah. This goes back to my timeline, right? Which is essentially for me to say, do I think the left fucked up by letting the progressives win the culture war? Yes, I think they did, because I don't think the progressives actually represent most people. And now, unfortunately, they've convinced a bunch of young, stupid kids that they do. And so a bunch of kids put like a black box in their Instagram to pretend that they care about black people, but they still find like the unk biking down the highway with like loud music annoying and stuff like that, right? Like in all ways, there's this performance that I think has ransacked the left in a way that I think is repugnant. The issue is that the real question is, why be left? And the reason that I am left is because when I go all the way back and I look at the systems that I believe in, I fundamentally keep falling left. I just fundamentally do. And so then the only question is, I guess I have to fight for what I believe in within the group, right?
My opinion is that the most logical, rational place for you to be would be voting for Donald Trump. And you're choosing not to, and you're just coming up with the reasons why it can sound like you're still part of that tribe.
Nope, because I don't believe in what I think Trump advocates for. Like, I fundamentally think that Trump doesn't reflect my values.
So you have in the Trump coalition, RFK Jr., which is a predominantly left health worldview that was dominant for decades. That is, people criticize him on vaccine stuff, but he's been pro-vaccine the whole time, even recommending the MMR vaccine. And no artificial food dyes. The health craze was a left culture war my whole life until these past several years. The right started picking up these things because the left had abandoned it and started siding with weird corporate interests on foodstuffs.
Yeah, partisan hacks are bad.
Tulsi Gabbard is anti-military industrial complex, anti-interventionist, and anti-regime change, which has been a position of the left my whole life. And so I look at Donald Trump and he says, we want a border barrier. That was Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders' position even up to 2016. And so looking at what Donald Trump is offering, he's moderate on abortion to the chagrin of conservatives. He's got left coded anti-war, which is not left anymore. I don't know. Now they're pro-war, I guess, pro-war with Ukraine.
What's up, Reckless? How you doing? Welcome in. I'm doing some work right now, so I'm kind of just listening while you guys argue. But I know I got a good group in here, so you guys must be having fun. I could see a lot of back and forth. Welcome in.
Donald Trump may be moderate right-leaning on a lot of issues, and he's built a moderate left-leaning coalition that satisfies a lot of my liberal policy views. So it makes literally no sense, in my opinion.
The problem with modern leftism is that there aren't many people who can dump down the ideology enough for normal people. I mean, yeah, but like, what flavor of leftism? Are we talking about, strict anti-capitalism? Are we just talking about some reasonable DemSoc considerations? Are we talking about, fucking Bernie Sanders is, right-wing, is a right-wing centrist? like where along the spectrum does leftism need to be boiled down to, basically?
And then for someone to be like, to defend the Constitution, we're going to support the Democrats. And I'm like, yeah, they arrested Trump's lawyers. That's unconstitutional. That's like an egregious violation of institutions and norms in this country. And they did it in numerous states. They falsely accused Trump of several crimes. They violated statute of limitations. Now you've got Letitia James falsely accusing Trump of mortgage fraud for paperwork he didn't even handle. And what I view as the divide between left and right, once again, going back to why young men are leaving, this is what I was saying to Bill Maher. You are left or right not based on your policy views. You are left or right based on what you believe to be true. And Bill agreed, despite the fact that we believe different things. So, for instance, he said, yeah, Trump wasn't a Russian agent, but he was certainly working with the Russians, and he lied. And when I brought up the Ukraine scandal, he didn't know about it. He did not know that in 2017, Politico reported at the same time as they were accusing Trump of colluding with Russia, Ukraine and the Democrats were literally colluding to assist Hillary Clinton to win, and it backfired, and it caused problems. We had Hunter Avallone on Timcast IRL, and when I pointed out that Joe Biden said, quote, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion, he immediately smirked and said, it never happened. And I played the video for him, and he was like, duh, no idea that it happened. So what I typically run into is liberals tend not to know what's going on in the world, and probably the reason why they're scared to do shows is because they default to, I didn't know that. And so we've even offered up certain friendly liberal personalities, I'll leave their name out of it because I'm not going to try and drag them, who, dirtbag leftist types. They're anti-woke, but they're leftist politically. They cancel on us all the time because they know they're going to sit down and they're going to end up sounding like Alex Jones. I'm going to pull up an article from the New York Times that says a Ukraine court ruled that they illegally interfered in the U.S. election to aid the Democrats. And they're going to have to reconcile with that and say, yes, that happened. But then when they go back to their Democrat circles, they're going to say, how dare you make that claim?
Well, I was actually like a Yang Gang kind of guy leading up to the 2020 election. And something that turned me back towards Trump was just like you're saying. I started seeing all these articles. A couple of them I think you covered on your show. Remember the one about there's a video of Trump. There may or may not be a video of Trump in an elevator.
I love that one, dude.
It's like the most bizarre headline I've ever heard. It's a great one. Then another one was... of course, the one you just went over with Adam Conover. That clip was going everywhere.
Look at this.
There were great people on both sides.
Come on. Huffington Post. A tape might exist of Trump doing something in an elevator. Though exactly where that somewhere is and what that something might be, no one in media can say. That's because no one in media seems to have seen the tape or is even confident it exists. Yo, Huffington Post literally wrote an article about Trump may or may not have done something that may have been recorded. We don't know if it was recorded. We don't know what it is.
Yep. And then another my top three, those are my three favorite ones. That one, there were good people on both sides, and then the Trump puts ketchup on his steak. Right. And that one hit home for me because I grew up like dirt poor. There's 8 kids in my family.
Let's try this one.
I put ketchup on my steak because we were eating cheap steak.
I'm actually going to make the bet you'll get it right. Did Donald Trump call white supremacists fine people?
I don't think so.
What did he say?
I can't remember. I just my assumption is that it's clickbaited because most things about Trump are.
Joe Biden launched his 2020 campaign claiming that Donald Trump called white supremacists fine people, which he never did. It's fake. And
what was the actual I don't know.
During Charlottesville, Trump said, I've seen the videos and there were very fine people on both sides. And I am not talking about the white nationalists and neo-Nazis because they should be condemned totally.
Gotcha.
And the entirety of the Democrat-aligned media apparatus cut off the back half of the quote and showed Trump saying, very fine people on both sides, clip, and then showing white nationalists marching with tiki torches.
Gotcha.
And that was how Joe Biden launched his campaign. And this is why I say, I consider myself to be like moderately pro-choice. So where Democrats were with safe, legal, and rare, I think abortion is wrong. I think it is a bad thing, but I also don't know how you get to a governmental system where a woman has to get a court writ to be able to have any kind of medical procedure. The end result, of course, is this. I don't want to. You always got to rehash the abortion debate because people don't understand the nuance. But you end up with a system where it's like a woman goes to the doctor and they're like, "Heavens me, you're having an emergency. Insert something. We have to terminate the baby to save your life, like unrelated to the pregnancy." And it's like, okay, let's try and get a speedy writ from a judge to confirm this.
Sure. So,
but the medical abortions has never really been a problem, though.
So my point is, the end result is that you get people abusing the system. So this is the challenge in trying to find a compromise. But without rehashing the abortion debate, my point is, the left's position is, abortion up to 9 months for any reason, no matter what.
Well, if I could put a,
this is actually what I want to kind of discuss. So I
would
think,
say if we had more programs to help after, I'd be fine with that too.
But look at Colorado.
Not to rehash.
Colorado removed all restriction on abortion up to 9 months.
right, which is what Canada has as well, right?
Which is insane.
Well, the issue is that in Canada, that basically never happens as a result of it. Right?
Doesn't matter.
So,
like, why legalize murder and then be like, yeah, but people don't get murdered, so we're gonna legalize it? What?
Probably because this fundamentally should be more of a congressional issue, right? Like the fact that Roe went through the judicial system in the first place is probably fundamentally part of the problem, right? And so
I disagree.
Here's what I would maybe zoom out to. We're talking about partisan hacks, right? It's really annoying to talk to partisan hacks. As somebody who's left-leaning, but I'm not really a partisan hack because I don't have a buy-in on your guys' election. Fundamentally, I'm not voting, right? So I don't care about Biden or Kamala because they represent X party. And you know, I'm sure you're familiar. The left wouldn't even acknowledge that like Biden was kind of weird because he would like had a bunch of clips like kind of like sniffing kids.
Sniffing little girls.
Yeah, it's weird. It's fucking weird. It's super, super weird. The issue is that on the right, I'm now hearing people unironically saying, I don't care about the Constitution. And if Donald Trump wants to get rid of the Constitution, that's fine with me. And it's like, all of this is crazy town.
Yeah, but that's not Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro or who else do we have? Steven Crowder or, you know.
Sure, we have different things like, for example, getting really mad at like certain violent jokes from the other side, but then celebrating the same types of violent jokes on your side. I think both sides.
Yeah, but what he's saying is like the mainstream pundits are the ones pushing for the crazy ideology
talking about the
on the
mainstream
left
pundits.
and Democrats
these
and
types of
party
jokes.
members too.
Right.
And that's why I asked you what I asked you earlier when I was like, well, how are you saying that you're like identifying moderate left, but some of the positions that you're holding, you know, the majority of right wing would consider some of them extreme left, and then the rest of them are probably right.
Because when you put well, first of all, part of what I'm trying to say is we're not still talking to each other, right? Like I'm here and I'm defending far left positions. I don't hold any of these positions. There's lots of people around me that don't.
Yeah, why don't defend them? I don't know.
Well, those are the only.
My
things.
point is that you're a conservative.
Yeah, I'm not a conservative.
You are.
I'm just not. I'm
see,
fundamentally not, right? I like Ezra Klein's abundance policies, right? I just
what is
like
that?
this.
What is that?
Ezra Klein?
His abundance. I know Ezra Klein, but
his abundance policies, for example, is very big on like basically removing a lot of proceduralism, figuring out like where the inefficiencies are, and making it the case that like blue states can build the things that they believe in, like green energy, high-speed rails, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Who disagrees?
Lots of people on the far left.
Steve Bannon wants to tax the rich. He thinks the billionaires should be taxed at 100%.
Sure, but then
Is he left wing?
I don't know much about Steve Bannon.
Well, he's considered like the architect of J6, a far-right white nationalist, which he's not, by the way. My point is left and right is not defined by your policies. It's defined by what you believe to be true.
I would say it's how you perform, mostly. It's how you appear.
I think it has to do,
guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Tim. I think it has to do with like the underlying culture of each side too. A little
That
bit
is how
as
you
well.
perform, right?
I mean,
the underlying culture. You code switch really well with men, and you say things that are like
Code switch.
Yeah, code switch, right? Like I'm sure that when
That's
you
a left-coded language.
code switching, that is
The right doesn't say it.
Code switching is, I'm pretty sure, from black culture. It's definitely not a left-coded thing.
Continue, but I'm going to pull it up.
Code switching?
I love this article.
I'm a boomer. I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's a black cultural thing.
Nope. I mean, maybe. Conservatives don't do this. White liberals present themselves as less competent in interactions with African Americans. The idea of like when Tim Walz was like, I can talk to white guys, conservatives were like, huh? Because conservatives tend not to change their way they communicate for other groups of people.
Just like, just look into the order if we like need to have this fight, which we don't even need to. Code switching comes from the black culture, which is talking about black people who are existing in like academic spaces who have to code switch from like the way that black people talk and interact and culturally exist amongst each other to being super white. This is what code switching comes from. It's not even relevant. That's just what code switching is. What I'm talking about here is that when you're thinking about left and right, it is reducing on like what policies are. And that's part of my problem, is that left and right should be policies. And the fact that it's performance-based, which you might argue that started with the left. Maybe it did. I'm not fully sure, but say it did. Say it did start with the left.
It goes back and forth, actually.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I think it's bad all around. I think it's harmful in every single way for people to look at me and go, she's got a choker and earpiece, so this is probably her worldview. It probably isn't. In fact, I think about my worldview. It's much more complex and nuanced. I think that we need to do that to each other. I need to go to Tim Pool and say, what do you believe? Because I know that you're not a stereotypical MAGA. I don't know what it is exactly.
That's right wing.
What?
What you just described, that ethos of let's talk. Let me put it this way. Carl Benjamin had a really great breakdown of my conversation with Adam Conover, and the clip that went massively viral, like Asmongold was talking about it, and he did a really funny bit, was I got exasperated after an hour and a half into the conversation where the dude was clearly not interested in truth. And, you know, with all due respect, like Adam Conover, I think he was great in terms of wanting to come on the show and with respect, but politically.
He does not represent us, just so it's very
Sure,
clear.
but I mean, he's
but he probably represents the average. I mean, he probably
he's massive.
represents a typical lefty guy.
20 million views per video on left liberal content. He's got a new podcast. He's getting tons of views. He's doing tours. Granted, he got a lot of flack over that crypto thing. But anyway, the point is, I said the very fine people hoax, and he says, which is, and I said that Trump called Nazis fine people, and he goes, right. He said, there's very fine people on both sides. And then I immediately said, and not the neo-Nazis and white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. To his response, he said that, and I was like, yes, and I pulled up Snopes that said Trump never called them this. And his response was, I don't know anything about it. Immediately got called out by everybody saying, wait, you just quoted it. You literally just referenced the very fine people on both sides, which is what he was accused of saying, without citing the remainder of the quote. So you do know what this thing is. Now you're claiming you don't. Carl Benjamin pointed out, he said the ethos of the liberal is adhering to the tribe, to the social order. And he says, and Tim Pool, once of that social order, prioritizes the truth, which is what actually happened. So Tim is desperately trying to say, and I'm quoting Carl, not speaking in third person, this is what actually happened. Whereas Adam is trying to maintain his adherence to social orthodoxy, which I refer to as wokeness. He does not value truth. He values what needs to be said to create social cohesion, whereas I value truth over social cohesion. It's actually, I think, a masculine, feminine coded thing, actually. Women
I think that's true. And there's a question I'd like to pose about, I mean, who do you think it's easier to change men's mind or women's mind?
Women's mind. There's like
you think so?
Yes. The meme that women just become the political system of their boyfriend and husband is like a classic on every single side. Like, yes, it is. Women just shift towards typically the opinion of the like people around them by and large. This is just unquestionable.
I would actually argue it's neutral, different. Men respond to different kinds of arguments, and women respond to different kinds of arguments. So, understanding the expectations that women have on average that are different, you can exploit either into believing whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I just feel like intuitively, I haven't dug deep into it, but it was something I was thinking about, and it was a good segue into it. I just think intuitively, men are probably looking for, more logic and more reason-based solutions, or more, if you can prove it to me. Obviously there's outliers and there's crazy people who are going to stick with it to the end.
But that doesn't necessarily confer a logical system. In fact, a lot of guys will be convinced to follow a guy because he's driving a flashy car. This is where you get fake it till you make it. A guy will, there was a guy that I knew who ran a business in California, and he made something like $60,000, $70,000 a year. He spent all of his money on, I can't remember what kind of car it was. He got like a Lotus or something, which is like 50 grand. It's not the craziest, but it looks crazy. And was broke, living in a bachelor apartment. But when he pulled up to business meetings in a Lotus, wearing a nice suit, they said, I want to be like him, not realizing he lived in squalor. He was putting on that, and it worked. And he was able to sell his company, and he made a lot of money. Fake it till you make it. That's Hollywood, baby.
performance, right? This is what I'm talking about, is that most people are moved on like vibes, right? That is the social media. It's true. It's the social media domain, which is unfortunate. The issue is that I'm very tired of hearing like right-leaning people being like, the vibe side is just the left. It's like, it's all of you. It's all of you all the way through. And it always has been. The biggest problem with the Enlightenment, and like to some way, what you're saying of being like, men are the logical, rational ones. I'm like, not really. They tend to be more object oriented, right? But subjectivity and emotionality is a fundamental part of understanding the world around you, because abstraction is essential to engaging in the complexities of what the world is around us. This is fundamentally Sorite's paradox.
Yeah, I mean, I think the better way to say it is like, yeah, I probably more agree with like what Tim was saying, is that, you know, maybe they're more abstract thought oriented, and then men are more like pragmatic.
Well, that would be bad. That would not be good. I think men are able to do abstract thought just as well as women.
Let me put it this way. Typically, not everybody always gets mad when you reference their group. They're like, I don't do that. Yeah, I get it. If you want to convince a woman to follow and do something, you need to have 10 women standing in front of her, all telling her that's what you're supposed to do.
That's what I was trying to get at.
If you want a man to follow, you need a bunch of men looking up to one big, strong guy lavished in gold and jewels, telling them what to do.
But you can also, I feel like so I work in the automotive industry. Like if there's a guy doing something, the wrong way, like, you know, doing the job the wrong way 10 times, and he's like losing time on it or whatever. If a guy like, you know, picks on him enough, he's like, oh yeah, you're gonna do it that way again. You're gonna drop, you're gonna go this way, and you can kind of give them shit, and you can kind of break down there and show it to them like, hey, it's better if you try to do it this way.
I got to be honest. I actually think in most interactions, if a guy was like working on a car and was doing it wrong, and another guy walked up and said, oh, actually, if you use the ratchet, it'll go faster, he'll go, oh, for real? No, thanks. That's
sometimes they're stuck in their ways, or
no, I get it.
They're like, and then and then you go back out there and they're.
I think generally speaking, obviously guys can be much more ego driven, but I do think the typical interaction with a guy is he'll be like, try doing it like that. You know, like for me, there are people who skateboard.
Yo, what's up, Soviet? How you doing? Black people had trillions stolen from them for unpaid labor from slavery, redlining, etc. Oh, what are you guys getting into here? It's talking about racial discrimination in Ivy League collegiate schools historically, which I mean, while it doesn't directly affect modern society to the extent in which he exaggerates it to, an acknowledgement of guilt which has happened would entitle said people to compensation in the form of reparations. How so? It goes back centuries. Nutjob feminists aren't the only ones who have adopted it. What's going on here? Full-throated, never mind. What's up, Salty? How you doing? XN, are you not modded on there? I can mod you. I thought you were modded. Let's see.
I've been skateboarding longer than they've been alive, and I watch their trick tip videos. Because I have no illusions of, like, I'm not going to lie to myself. I can't do that thing. Here's a guy who's 15 years old who's better at me. He's going to tell me how to do it. Dang, I've been skating longer than he's been alive. I'll take the advice that I can get. But more to the point, I think there are obstinate guys who are going to be like, I know what I'm doing. Get out of my face.
It's all good.
But anyway, the major point is the Democratic Party is female-coded. The Republican Party is male-coded. You were mentioning that it's like performative in vibes, but I would argue that's a generality of the left and a tendency of the right. So on the right, I was on trigonometry. It was like 2 months ago. They put out a month ago. And what the guys on trigonometry said to me was that you're just blanketing the left. I could say something about the right, and I said, you're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. On the right, you have Tulsi Gabbard, former liberal, RFK Jr., former liberal. You have Elon Musk, former liberal. Technically all still liberals, I guess, but working with the Republicans. And then you have Christian conservative Charlie Kirk, probably the most prominent, who says, Tim Pool, you're a moderate liberal-leaning guy. Come sit on my stage for the biggest event of the year in politics and talk about what you think. And it's that's not vibe coded. I can go on that stage and say Donald Trump should be criminally investigated for the command.
Yeah, at least that accent. At least you got that.
Right in Yemen.
No, you should be modded. You're over there. I appreciate it.
And that killed a 7-year-old American girl. And the conservatives are like, okay, But heaven forbid a liberal go into space and say something like, remember Seth Moulton was like, we shouldn't be having males compete in women's sports? They went after that guy, went for his throat.
Well, they couldn't admit that there was some like signs of early dementia or some signs of like mental degradation and then as soon as he gets out of office, or maybe they're thinking about running Kamala against him, he's falling apart.
The group that is accepting is always the group that's been on the tail end for the last little bit, right? So the left was the really accepting chill group that just basically allowed everyone in as long as you stood for a lot of similar ideas, and they would kind of talk to everyone during the entire rationalist era, right? It was a very, very open space. The issue is that then the left won the culture war by canceling a lot of right speakers off of their platforms, and then they got deranged and echo chambered and wouldn't talk to anyone anymore. So now the right is the accepting side, but to assume that it will remain the accepting side is just false.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, there's no evidence to even support that it's doing that.
If you don't mind, sorry. Whereas you look back to like the early era when the right was culturally leading again, if you look back into like maybe like the 90s or whatever, you see a very strict system on the right where if they find out that you've ever cheated, you're out. If they find out that you've got a baby out of wedlock, you're out. If they find out you've sworn too many times, it was very, very purity testing, because typically the group that is in the higher level of cultural power will create purity testing because they're better. And so they can kick people out, and then the other group absorbs them until that other group gets more power, and then it'll be back and forth and back and forth. The reason I am left is because of what I believe.
Right.
And that's
it. So I'm left too.
Sure.
Except no one in the modern political space will say Tim Pool's left wing.
Potential. I don't know all of your political leanings, so you might be left.
So like Steve Bannon is a better example. So I don't talk about myself. I've argued with him. He's left of me. He said we should be taxing the billionaires and everything. Take their money. They're crooks. They're ripping us off. They're flooding the electoral system. They're buying our politicians. Take everything they got. And I was like, why? And he goes, so they don't have it. It has nothing to do with, you love saying we're going to fund politics. No. The billionaires are bad. And then I laughed and I was like, Steve, you would have fit right in at Occupy Wall Street. And he's like, you think? And I was like, that's literally the Occupy Wall Street position. The billionaires are ripping us off. They flooded the zone in politics with money. They don't represent our interests. They're selling out the working class. They've been doing it for a long time. This is why Bernie Sanders was popular. Mm-hmm. It was he literally said in 2015, open borders is a Koch brothers proposal. No open borders. And the World Socialist website called him a nationalist capitalist for wanting secure borders. Left and right has nothing to do with your policy views. Literally nothing.
It must. What I'm saying is I don't care what these bullshit assholes say. I don't care. They don't get to rob us of our words, and they don't get to rob us of our principles, right? I'm a Christian that lots of Christians don't like. And that doesn't mean that I'm not a Christian. That doesn't mean that I don't love Christianity, and I fight for it like vehemently because I believe in it, despite the fact that most of the group would kick me out. I'm a feminist that most feminists call a pick-me. They don't like me very much, but I'm a feminist because I believe in what the actual movement
was Nancy Mace.
Of feminism says. I actually, and guns. I think gun laws are very feminist, right?
Right-wing.
I'm just not right-wing because left-leaning policy is strong institutions, regulated economy, right? It is taking care of the vulnerable, welfare state, and it is allowing individuals freedoms and liberties to do what they would like to do.
Yeah, but I think I get what you're saying, but I'm going to say it again. Colloquially today, people don't use that word in that way. And you can make the argument.
You don't get to take it from me.
So my point is, let's just say this. We'll call it tribal left, tribal right. We'll call it team red and team blue. You're team red.
I'm team gray.
You're actually team red.
Scott Alexander writes about this.
It's fascinating that,
I'm not. I don't want to get into Trump bashing here, especially because I really do want to avoid doing too much domestic policy conversation as a Canadian stuff. But I'm not team red because I think what the conservative purpose is to preserve and to consecrate and conserve tradition and values and constitution, which made us in the past so great. And the point of the left is to progress us and push us forward. And I want to do that. I want to push us forward.
That's the right.
It's not.
That's the colloquial right.
It's not.
9 million Obama voters in 2016 voted for Donald Trump. And one of the big reasons was that Donald Trump went on stage at the RNC and unfurled a pride flag to thunderous applause. Donald Trump came into the Republican Party and pushed this political faction in a progressive direction. He's a moderate. Even Vox called him a moderate. You've got many drag and transgender Trump supporters. Donald Trump said on the issue of gay marriage,
not a fan of any of that.
Donald Trump
as someone who's further right,
people have to have
Tim's just
M
right,
and
yeah.
F on their passport. So now most trans people cannot go internationally anywhere where they don't appear as like an M on their passport.
And
that's just not, that's dangerous for trans people. If you've got, if you want to do, I'm running into this with a friend right now who tries to do war correspondence in countries that don't like trans people. She, in every way, is a woman. Nobody would look at her and think that that person should walk into a male bathroom. But because she's trans, she has an M on her passport, and she now cannot go into multiple very conservative countries because of threats to her life.
To be fair,
I mean, she'd be under,
in the first place.
he'd be under threat if they went anyways.
No, she wouldn't, because most people, first of all, she was not super out about her transness. Most people never knew at all. And she has gone into these countries numerous of times in the past. She can't anymore at all because of this passport change. That isn't helping trans people. That is fundamentally.
That just seems like a self-inflicted.
But regardless,
how is this self-inflicted at all?
I mean, you're choosing to go to those zones.
She's a war correspondent as her career. Yes, she goes to Iraq, but she's always gone to Iraq.
You know, I'll concede this is a lefty position, and it is, I would refer to as, I don't know what's the right way to describe this, farcical, fantastical. I did conflict reporting. I didn't go to any active war zones. I went to civil war and like conflict and crisis and disaster zones. And it was always fascinating to me because of this political correctness reality, especially pertaining to HR and stuff. The story that I usually tell is I was doing what's called heat training. It's redundant. Heat includes the word training. Hostile environment action training. And they couldn't actually tell the women not to go to these zones and prepare them for what happens to women in war zones because they'd get sued if they did. And so someone asked this former MI6 guy, should women who go into conflict zones be concerned about rape? And he went, men get raped. Men get raped. Anyway, so moving on. Because he literally couldn't say, if you're a woman, you go to a war zone, and you're captured, you'll be mercilessly raped and sold into slavery. And if you're a man, you probably won't be.
You'll be killed.
Because if he did, that would be sexual discrimination in a work environment because this is a contracted company for insurance providers and media outlets. He's not allowed to say these things. So stupid. The idea that a trans person thinks they have a right to go to a conflict zone and, oh, heavens me, my passport. Dude, that you die. You go to conflict zones, you assume the risks of who you are and what you are. And this idea that you are entitled to some special privilege to go to a foreign country where you may be killed in any circumstance is laughably insane.
What's the benefit of changing any of these passport things except for
1993, there was a law passed in the United States because forever, when medical testing was done for drugs, they did not do it on women. And so when women would go to the hospital with pain, they'd say, take this painkiller. And the woman would say, it hurts. And they go, women are such fucking babies. And then they were like, hey, maybe drugs work differently on men and women due to physiology. So they passed a law saying from now on, medical research has to be done on both men and women because we are just kind of realizing the drugs work differently on women. So if someone, considering men and women have different organs, quite literally, there's a reason for why we designate your gender.
On your passport?
On it's an ID.
Why on my passport does it need to say for somebody who in every single way, it's like Blair White,
yeah, sure.
Look at them and say, it looks like a woman.
Are women allowed to walk around outside in Islamic nations? Without a man?
I was going to say with a man and usually covered, yes.
So with a man. So if a female decides to get a visa to...
Do you think that a Blair White could walk around in Islamic countries without a man because they'd be like, well, she's trans? No, of course not.
Of course not.
So the war correspondent is already going...
I think you have a right to subvert the laws of a foreign nation that has invited you into their country.
How is it subverting the laws?
Lying to subvert their laws, which have specific gendered laws. You say, I should have a government document that lies so I can break the law in that country. Is an absurdity.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. The laws that they would be breaking is that if Blair White has M on their passport, I guess Blair should be walking around without head coverings and wearing like keffiyeh and not having a person, which they would kill her for because they would see a woman.
What right do you have to someone else's nation? I don't understand.
This isn't about a right. This is about your own country granting you the ability to exist and perform in the way that every single person is going to treat you.
We're talking specifically about your friend who wants to go to conflict zones in foreign countries and lie to their government to get privy to access.
You have the right to go and do your work.
You do not have a right to someone else's nation. They grant you a privilege to enter under visa.
Sure, but the issue is that you're making it seem like I would grant you that if it was the other nations getting mad at America, being like, put M on trans passports. But that's not what happened. Trump made the decision himself, unrelated to any external pressures. I'm not even sure why.
You said they could be killed.
They could be killed if Blair White...
Would the government take action against this person?
They probably would get in major trouble at the border at all.
Agreed.
They would.
So you're asking the U.S. government to produce a false document to lie to a foreign government so they can get a visa.
Are you saying that it was a false document before, that the government was just lying this entire time?
If you're a man and they put female on your passport, they're lying.
Well, if you put gender and put woman... Isn't that fine?
There's no W. It's male or female. Those are sexes. It's biology.
Sure, but couldn't we just update the passport to be gender?
No.
Why not?
Because we're identifying a biological structure of human beings for a purpose because different laws...
On the passport?
Indeed. It's an ID. And we have international treaties with foreign nations because they have different laws than us. This idea that Americans get to go and do whatever they want whenever they want is so stupid.
That's not what I'm advocating for.
You think an American male should be able to get a passport that says they're a female so they can enter a country where it's illegal and do things that are otherwise illegal?
I think that the idea that, like, you were basically saying that Trump is pro-trans in every way. And I said...
I didn't say he was pro-trans.
You said that he was very
moderate on the issue.
Yeah, exactly. And I said he immediately did something that actually has security and life threats against your civilians. You know what the American government has responsibility for? Protecting its citizens.
What does that have to do with entering a foreign country under sovereign jurisdiction?
Because you're still an American citizen that the government has a procedure to protect. So if that trans person goes, you know what? I'll embrace that.
Why?
Blair White goes, it should say M on my passport, and then goes in. Does the American government have to go rescue her when she inevitably gets attacked and assaulted? Or does she just have to give up on her career as a war correspondent?
Yes, you do. You're not entitled to these things. This is weird.
It's such a wild thing for you to say. It's totally chill that the American government can just be like, nah, you're not allowed to do your
I think you're lying.
Anymore. I'm not lying.
You think Americans should have a right to commit crimes in other countries, yes or no?
That's not what I've said.
I'm not saying you are, but is the answer no?
No.
So Americans should not be able to break the law in other countries?
Correct.
Even when those laws are bullshit?
By and large. And the American government should protect you when you do it.
Don't go to, where is it, like Dubai? They have like, if a woman gets raped in Dubai, you go to prison. Okay. So is it illegal for women to walk around in these countries? It is, right?
Yeah, without the male and et cetera, yes.
So if a female dresses up like a man and takes hormones to mask it to the government, like let's say a woman in Saudi Arabia starts illicitly taking testosterone to appear like a man to go around and break, they would get in trouble for that, wouldn't they?
Probably not if they passed well enough because nobody would know.
No, I'm saying when they got caught, it's a crime. It is illegal to do.
Because they're trans, yeah.
So I don't understand how you're arguing.
Trans. You're basically saying that trans people just shouldn't go where they're not, where it's illegal for them to exist. That's what you're saying.
Why would you? Well, hold on.
Any reason that you might want to do war correspondence? What do you mean?
Do you recognize that war correspondents can die?
Yeah.
So I don't understand what your point is.
My point is that you should
People have a right to go to foreign war zones without the risk of death, and they should be able to.
Not what I'm advocating for. They have a right to be able to go, and their government shouldn't be immediately outing them to make it more dangerous.
Wait. You think people have a right to go to any country they want?
Assuming that the government approves their visa, et cetera, yet not right.
Okay. I agree if they approve their visa, right?
They have the liberty to go, I should say. A right is probably
assuming
the wrong
that
word.
Foreign government says we will grant you the visa.
Yeah, the liberty to.
Do people have a right to lie on their visa applications?
No, but the issue is that before the government didn't view that it was a lie, and now they do.
It is. Because we're not talking about gender on passports. You agree with that. We're talking about biological sex.
I'm advocating that essentially you probably should allow somebody like Blair White.
Different argument. You are upset that Donald Trump said you have to have your biological sex.
Undid something because it was already done.
Because they were putting fake sexes on passports.
Essentially, yeah, which would have been better if they did gender and said, I agree.
Okay, so then the issue is, which is this is where the contention is. You have a friend who wants a false biological sex listed on their passport,
wants their
so they can defraud a foreign country into entering.
Not really. I want them to be able to have the liberty to go there, and that the moment that they go there, they won't...
The liberty to go there.
The liberty to go there.
At the permission of the government.
Both
who
of them.
expects you to tell the truth on things like what your biological
For
sex
example,
is.
if your government just agrees that essentially you perform as a woman and they're willing to give you an F so that you can enter spaces safely and walk around and not be attacked for just how you appear, yes.
Do you think countries like the Emirates and Dubai appreciate the fact that people are lying about their gender to bypass?
Probably not. Probably not. I
So
just don't really...
I
don't care about like...
This is American exceptionalism. This is like American citizens can present false paperwork to foreign countries to get access to their
It's
nation.
not false paperwork if the government verifies it.
It is.
It's not.
So when the government says it, it's true.
On the passport, fundamentally...
If the government asserts something, it's a fact.
That's not what I've said.
And it's not true.
We have to-
The government can lie.
Well, Tim, do you want to engage with what I'm saying, or do you want to create a
No, I think
version
you're
of what I'm
lying.
saying? I'm not lying.
An individual has no right to a foreign country, period.
I've never said that they have a right. They have a liberty to it.
A liberty to what?
To apply to go there.
And is lying to that government okay?
It's not lying if your government is willing to agree that essentially you can be...
Are males
F.
females?
No, they're not.
Okay, so if a male says I'm female, is that a lie?
Yes.
So if a person applies for a passport to the government who is male and says I'm female, is he lying?
It depends on if the government is willing to allow female to include woman looking. And if
I'm talking about sexes, not genders.
Yeah, and if the government...
Is it a lie
which is what
for
I
a man?
I'm answering you. I'm answering you. Tim,
this is why men
you
are
have to let
leaving
me
the
finish.
left.
You have to let me... Well, the issue is you have to let me talk, right? I'm engaging with you in exceptionally good faith.
This is why men are
I'm
leaving the
answering your questions directly, and I'm not pivoting away from them.
You are.
You just don't like my answers, which is totally okay.
A male who says I'm female is lying. Because we're talking about biological sex.
Yes.
So if a male goes to the Saudi government and says I'm a female, he lied, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think people have a right to lie to foreign governments to get visas?
To get visas, not usually. I'm sure there's some exceptions that I might be okay with it.
That you can lie to a foreign government to get a visa?
Yeah, so for example, if you I think a lot of people lie to North Korea on their visas as to what they're doing, who are helping smuggle in information and helping freeing North Koreans, for an example.
Sure, to be fair, we're talking about
Jordan Hart-
subterfuge.
Actually, I shouldn't say anyone who does this, right? But there are people who do this to really extremist regimes like North Korea. In that case, they're lying on their visa. But I'm kind of okay with it, right? Because they're trying to help the North Koreans, right? So in this case, if you've got a country...
So it's an adversarial nation.
Yep.
And we have...
So if you've got a country that looks at trans people and says that they don't exist and there is no way for Blair to enter safely without us killing her, I'm okay lying a little bit to that country so that Blair can enter safely and do her job.
And the government should aid that lie.
Well, the lie would be... the issue is that the lie depends on how the government's determining what qualifies as F. If they're allowing basically woman-performing people to qualify as F for the sake of a passport, it's not really a lie.
I think this is a really great example of why young men are leaving the left. Because I'll just give you my personal feelings, which just how I interpret this moment right now.
Sure.
Your statements are illogical.
They're not. They're just not face valid.
are.
They're not face valid, right? Do you know what that means?
You've made a claim that you've backtracked a little bit. When you fluttered between gender and sex, you then said that we should change passports to be gender, not sex. You acknowledge that sex is different.
Sure, yeah. I should have baked in extra arguments.
You've asserted an entitlement to lie to foreign governments for access to their countries.
To some degree, yeah. You agreed to that, though, right?
So, no, I didn't.
Yeah, you said, there's certain situations
I was
that you're going
acknowledging
to
what
lie.
you had said about people lying to get
So
into
you
North
don't think that people should lie to get into North Korea to help aid those people in freeing themselves from the extreme oppression that North Koreans experience? You think it's bad when humanitarians?
It wouldn't be morally bad, but it would be wrong. Yeah, I mean
Why?
you shouldn't try to do. I mean you're.
I mean it's a question of the sovereignty of nations. I don't like North Korea.
Should America be like, hey, North Korea, just a heads up, these people?
I
Careful, they're not entering just to do tourism. They actually
I think if we
wanna
have
help your people.
treaties with nations we're not actively at war with, we should do our best to adhere to them. And so the question of international treaties pertaining to visas, the idea that the U.S. government would permit people to lie on their passports, it's a weird thing to advocate for.
Sure. The issue is that, again, this is why
why lie on your passport? I don't understand.
Why insist on having biology on your passport? Why not have gender?
Because there are laws in certain nations.
Why not have both?
Because it's a redundancy. It's meaningless.
It's not redundant.
So you
right?
put, I'm a male woman?
Well, Blair White.
What is a woman?
What is a woman? It is a performance.
There we go.
What does that mean?
It means that you appear woman. It's like porn. What's porn? Well, you see it when you know it, right? If you look at it, that's porn. That naked image, it's not porn.
Why can't liberals answer this question?
Because because do you want me to go why?
Because they're scared too?
No, because of we went into
woman
it
is an
before.
adult human female?
No, not at all. The issue is that it's Sorite's paradox. Do you know what Sorite's
what is
paradox is? Okay, I've got 1,000 grains of sand, and I say that's a heap of sand. Would you agree with me?
Oh, I know this. Yes, I use it all the time.
Okay.
How many grains of sand makes a heap?
Exactly, right? And the line there is hard to know, right?
It's really not.
So Blair White is a man. Is a
And
man.
Blair White will tell you Blair White is a man.
Okay. That's fine for Blair White.
Blair White literally makes videos where...
You want Blair White to walk into male bathrooms?
No.
Oh.
No.
Why not?
Well, my position on this is like Blair White walking into a men's room will create a weird social chaos, and I'm not really concerned about Blair.
What kind of social chaos would it make?
So for men, it's a bit different for women, right? And so the issue is not specifically about Blair White. It's about Buck Angel, a better example.
Sure.
Buck Angel walking into a women's room is going to start a fight. And so
Why?
Because Buck Angel is a masculine, bicycle mustached, male-looking individual.
So Hulk Hogan with a vagina is essentially like more of a
should
woman.
be using the men's room. But literally, Hulk Hogan with a vagina is a literal woman.
Hulk Hogan with a vagina should be using the men's room?
Yes.
Gotcha. Why?
Social order.
Because what's the social piece?
The social piece is that people make judgments based on appearance. And there have been instances, there was one story out of McDonald's where a lesbian female was pulled from the women's bathroom and the police kept calling her sir, despite the fact it was a literal biological female, because of this controversy and conundrum.
Yeah.
So I don't have this staunch right conservative, make everybody use their biological gender space, because that will just be chaotic. That being said, there's no simple answer. Why? Because a male who was exposing himself to children went into a spa in California, in San Francisco, exposed himself to women and children. And when a woman complained, they said, the assumption is this person is trans and we can't intervene. When in fact, it wasn't a trans person. It was a male who was exposing himself to children.
Right.
So therein lies a much greater problem. On the surface, I think the simple answer is, I don't see how any guy's going to appreciate Buck Angel walk into a ladies' room with their wife.
Exactly,
Never
because
gonna happen.
people make judgments on appearance.
Indeed.
And those judgments on appearance that we make is that performance.
And that has nothing to do with your entitlement to government documents nor entering foreign
I'm not getting there yet, right? If we make judgments based on appearance, you look at me and how do you know I'm a woman? Did you check my passport?
No.
Did you check my vagina?
Nope.
I could have a penis for all we know.
Probably not.
I could. Why are you assuming I'm a woman?
Well, you have a woman's body.
Right. Yes, I perform very woman.
Let's roll. Your skin. Men have thicker skin, and it's usually easy. You notice the brow ridge, your facial features, the structure of your shoulders compared to your hips, the fact that you have breasts. These are all probably a woman.
Right. So if a woman gets breast implants, is she more or less a woman?
Neither.
Okay. But she appears more feminine, right?
No.
Yeah, like a super, super busty woman is obviously going to be more hyper femme.
I don't agree.
This is just.
I don't think your breast size makes you more or less of a woman.
I said femme at this point.
Yeah, I don't think femininity is reduced to like the size of a woman's breasts, because then morbidly obese women will be more feminine. That doesn't make sense.
Well, it's more, again, it's performance, right? Like this is why if you search for porn and you look up like super like hyper feminine or hyper feminine like porn, you're going to get women with huge tits and a huge ass. This is obviously true.
Yeah,
because these are feminine traits, right?
So,
men don't typically have big tits and big asses.
So creating subcategories to define something doesn't change that woman and man are typically used to define adult human, male or female.
Yeah, I would say like 90% of the time. And the problem is that we have to legislate for like also the 10%. And so when it works 90%.
10%.
Sure, it's probably less than that.
Substantially less.
Sure, but we still have to legislate for it.
Yeah,
Because they're our citizens, right? We can't just be like, fuck you guys. You're not our problem.
Actually, the argument from trans people is it was better off before any of this was happening, when trans people just used bathrooms without anyone noticing.
But I agree that the trans
legislating for it actually caused more problems.
Well, legislating for it in the way that the trans movement has legislated for it has caused problems,
and
right?
They were trying to get it removed from the DSM-5 as well. Which would
believe so, yes.
Which would mean they can no longer get medical treatment or prescriptions for.
Yeah, look here. If you want to have somebody who's very critical of the trans group and thinks they're full of retards, you found the girl, right? I think there's lots of issues with trans advocacy, but I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the group. I'm talking about the idea, which is what I'm wanting to gauge in. People make judgments on appearance.
Body dysmorphic disorder?
What about it?
Should people have a right to get their hands chopped off?
It depends on if there's evidence that it benefits them.
Well, how would it benefit someone to cut their hand off?
Well, how would it benefit somebody to transition? The same.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It does.
It literally doesn't.
So-
Suicide ideation is suicidality is actually, to quote Chase Strangio, suicide attempts and suicide do not decrease from transition.
Chase Strangio is not a strong one to like the issue here.
Well, the ACLU's lawyer to the Supreme Court is the best example I'm going to come up with.
Sure, but you probably shouldn't use a lawyer when you're talking about like trans research.
A lawyer who's trying to convince the Supreme Court is not the better example?
No, I would say researchers are, right? Like we should go to the actual data. I don't care what
and
lawyers
desistance
making
rates
arguments.
are in the majority.
Desistance rates for under 18 are, right? The issue is that if you look at data, so
If you're over 18, do whatever you want. I don't care.
you want me to tell you about the data?
Sure.
Okay, so there's tons of research on specifically adults, and this was before it was super politicized, because right now, most of the data that you look at for trans science between like 2018 to about 2024 is politicized on both sides. There's groups that are very anti-trans doing science and it's garbage, and there's sides that are very pro-trans and they do science and it's also garbage. And so the issue is that we have like almost 2 decades now of science that we can't rely on. So we have to look back at like the earlier stuff and be really scrupulous about the methodology specifically. And so one of in the most methodologically sound studies, it's an RCT, it's longitudinal, it is a brilliant study. I believe it came out in 2003. I could be incorrect, but it looks at adults over time who transitioned or did not transition, right? And all the effects and sequelae. And when you look at the adults who transitioned over the like 10-year period that they were studying them for, there was a 60% reduction in attempt rate. And by attempt rate, I mean medically diagnosed, confirmed at a hospital attempt rate, which is huge.
Yeah, but hold on. I don't care.
Why?
I'm talking about kids.
I'm talking about adults.
I know, but I don't care what adults do.
But when we're talking about passports and like traveling and all this sort of
that's
stuff.
That's government treaties and trying to get access to a foreign nation, which you have no right to attain.
Sure, that's one argument that you're making
care
for it. But when I'm talking about trans people, I'm
use the bathroom of which you most likely socially align visually.
Yeah, by and large, we should also allow their passports to not like immediately out them as a group that a culture that we believe is hateful and we don't agree
Who's
with.
checking American passports on the fly? Like, are you going to bars and being like,
when
let me see
you
your passport?
go through TSA,
okay. Like, is a TSA agent gonna like lynch a trans person going to Omaha?
not an American.
cares?
I'm talking about Iranians.
Why are you going to Iran?
Because you have the liberty to do so.
Not if Iran says no.
Again, my issue isn't that Iran can or cannot say no. My issue is the government, your government, outing you in a dangerous way for no other reason than petty jabs because trans people went too far with policy. I think that's bad politicking.
I think there's political ramifications internationally for us having false passports.
Again, if the government will create a way that you can basically allow trans people to have a passport that looks in the way that they are presenting so that they don't get in trouble in countries that will throw trans people off of buildings, I think it's good for your government.
Why would you go to a country that they're going to throw you off a building?
So what do you mean? What is this question? Why would women go to any country ever that they care about and do like work to like help the poor? I don't know, because they want to. They have the liberty to do so.
Right. And so this is why I asked, why would you do it? You gave an answer.
Liberty.
And my point is, sometimes you die, right?
The government shouldn't be outing you to kill you. I don't care if a trans person goes to Iran and then in the process of being in Iran, they die as a war correspondent. I care about your own government outing you and setting you up to be killed for no other reasons than petty jabs.
And I'm gonna say once again, the reason why I think young men are leaving the left is that this sounds like sophistry.
So again, let's talk about face validity. Do you know what face validity is?
Explain.
Okay, face validity is this process in science. So when we do science, we look for things. So like when we test whether or not I'm testing depression, there's validity measures that we apply to ensure that I'm capturing depression and not something else like anxiety, right? One of the ways that we can test for whether or not we're capturing a construct is called face validity. And all that means is it appears good. And the issue is that the world is so much more complex. Every scientist knows that face validity as a form of validity is garbage because I might write an emo measure to test how emo you are, but that doesn't mean that I'm tapping into the emo construct at all. Even though all the questions might sound good and I ask you a bunch about Green Day and all these sorts of things, and I ask you how many black types of like makeups you have.
They're not emo.
Right, they might be goth, right? They might be...
They're pop punk.
There you go, right? They might be something else.
I call them cult punk now.
So this is why face validity is a really weak thinking system. And my problem with the right, and what you said before with men, is that you said it's easier to be on the right. And I would say, That's a weak answer. Because
It's true.
as a human being, it's not better to take the easy path. You should take the right pathway.
No one said that's not you called my answer weak, which is nonsensical. It is. You agreed with me that it was easier to be on the right for a man.
It's not nonsensical for me to say taking the easier path isn't good.
Calling my answer weak is not saying.
I didn't say your answer's weak. I said that men who
That's a
take
weak
the
answer.
easier pathway. When you say it's easier, that the weak
No, thanks,
answer is
Evan, I
in,
appreciate it.
like essentially when men say
You
it's
mean
just
it's the
easier
weak
to be
path.
right. That's weak.
It's the weak path.
Sure.
Yeah, I think if we dive into this, men don't want to live in a world of sophistry. They don't want to be told to say there are 5 lights through pain of penalty. So when it's easier to be on the right, it's more like if you're on the right and you go to someone and say, that you're gay, most people on the right, not all, are going to be like, I don't need to know that. I don't care.
How do you know what's true?
Well, that's a good point. You don't.
Right. And so what I'm arguing is
The
that
only thing I know is that I know nothing.
Sure, but you know some things, right? And it's good to know that you know.
We believe some things.
Well, I'm an objectivist when it comes to I'm a science realist, right? I believe that there are things we can discover that are true and will stay true regardless of how people feel about them, right? I think my pencil will fall and that's due to gravity because it's true. And it doesn't matter if I'm like, oh God, please don't do it. Oh shit, I lost again.
We agree on that, but that's a less than 1/1,000,000th of reality. So arguing that we can understand something basic like, a question I like to ask people is if I
Gravity's not basic, right? Gravity's sequelae of falling is basic, but we don't even know what causes gravity.
Right. So if I were to take this phone and whip it as hard as I could at that window, what would happen?
I don't know how thick your windows are, but it would at least smash your phone. It might smash your window.
That's a great answer because some people say the window would break. I say, actually, you don't know that. The assumption is the window would break because typically hard object thrown at window breaks window. However, it could be a bulletproof window. So while there are certain things that we can agree on, like if I drop object, it falls because gravity is a thing, most things we assume or believe, but we don't know.
So why did I arrive at the right answer when you might have expected me not to?
I didn't know. I didn't have an expectation of your right.
Sure, but why did I arrive at the correct answer of essentially saying, I don't know how thick your window is, but your phone would probably break at least?
Higher IQ?
Probably not. Right?
No, I think
it's probably, for example, Adam Conover is probably not stupid, but I think he says lots of stupid shit. But
because he's trying to adhere to a liberal orthodoxy.
Because
a question of
yes, because partisanry defaults your brain to bad thinking strategies, and what I care about. All I care about in my platform is good think. And face validity is not a valid way to determine whether a construct is true or not, because it falls apart the moment you look at the complexities of the world.
Which is why I say when you go so hard on this passports out you, people don't buy it.
I don't care. If I explain to them how blitzscaling works as a venture capitalist system, you might be like, that shouldn't work. I don't really care. It's really complicated. It's infinitely complicated.
But you sound like Adam Conover is my point.
What?
You sound like Adam Conover.
No, because I don't deny IQ and I don't deny science, right? I don't sound like Adam Conover in any way other than we might align on trans stuff. But the issue is I'm not engaging in science denial.
Right, let's try this. The issue of being able to travel to a foreign country is predicated upon the acceptance of that foreign country letting you in. It's their sovereignty. So internally, there really isn't an issue pertaining to your passport saying MF or whatever. Unless you're trying to get a ladies' night discount, which is unconstitutional anyway, and they get sued 1,000,000 times over for it. There's very rare circumstances other than the emotions of the individual where it matters, except in a medical function, where a doctor needs to know what kind of medicine to prescribe you based on your biology.
And how do you know that somebody's female?
Are you saying in a medical context?
Female, the way that you would define female.
I mean, we make assumptions on the surface for the most part, but I fully recognize for someone like Blair, I have no problem saying she and her because
Why?
Because Blair gives me respect.
Yeah, you're a respectful person, and
Blair returns the respect.
It would also be really fucking weird to say he, him, right?
No, not really. I mean, Blair has said that she is actually a he and a man, and I think Blair even called her boyfriend gay. And so I'm kind of like, I don't know, Blair's nice, respectful, entertains things logically, and asks me as a preferred pronoun. I say, okay. We had a drag queen on the show, said I use she. I said, okay, I don't care, whatever.
Sure.
People who are disrespectful, I'll call all sorts of weird names.
Sure, I'm not asking
I'll
about
insult
people
them.
who are like, yeah, I don't expect you to play the same social tit for tat.
But this is my point. Conservatives,
actually, one question, sorry, if I can pause you. I don't know who Blair is, okay? I'm a random person plucked from the internet, from the world who's never seen the internet. Which pronouns would they guess Blair is?
She, her.
Why?
Because Blair White looks female.
Right. And so that looks female piece is something that I think is worth applying a word to, which we call gender.
Trans.
Gender. Right? Because that's the word that you can pick a different word, I suppose, but gender is what we're talking about when we say that somebody performs in such a way, right? The reason that you know that I'm a woman is because I perform like a woman in every single way, even though it is possible, technically, that I'm a sneaky XY chromosome haver. So I even have a vagina, but I'm technically XY.
Well, there's androgen. I forgot what the actual thing is called. Androgen immunity. You're familiar with that?
Yeah.
Some people are born XY, but the testosterone they're immune to testosterone.
Yeah.
So they develop like females. I think the issue largely is just down to why does that matter if someone's ID says their biological sex on it?
Because say for somebody like intersex. Well, intersex, how do you even?
Well, intersex actually has the capability to change.
What?
If you're birth like.
Yeah, I think they have to pick whenever they're like younger or something like that.
They just they just pick a sex?
Yeah, like I think they have both, and the parents basically have to choose.
I'll tell you this. I will grant all luxuries afforded to anyone who is legitimately intersex. I have no issue with that. It's a minority of the population. I don't think we should legislate for the majority for a minority in that way. So by all means, let's say, sure, intersex makes up like 0.017% of the population, and let's try to accommodate them. It's unfortunate they ended up in that circumstance.
Sure. So like, for example, the Algerian boxer, Amane, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone insisted that she was trans. Seems like there's no evidence that's come out. It seems likely that she might have some intersex stuff, her testosterone.
XY, I think.
Yeah, like she might be androgen resistant or something like that. But in all ways, she's Algerian, right? They've thought she was a female from birth, and Algeria is not exactly gender open, right? When we looked at that situation, the right got really agitated because essentially gender was thrust in their face, and it's hard to solve, especially if you won't even. Well, they said it was a guy, but it isn't a guy, right? In any way, shape, or form. And in fact, insisting she, with breasts, is a guy.
She didn't have breasts. That was the issue.
I think that she has like some level, I think most XYs will have some level of mammary development because without testosterone, this is why pedophiles who are on SSRIs often have mammary development. Mammary development is kind of default unless you have androgen to prevent it. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
I think you're right. That's why like dudes with steroids, when they stop producing testosterone after the fact, they end up growing
boobs. They'll get some boobies, right? And so she did have breasts. They were probably small. I wouldn't be surprised because
bitch that Bob was his name.
Sure, but like Asian women have small tits, and that doesn't mean that we're like, that's a man now, it's a man. Otherwise, my argument that more tits equals more woman would be true.
The issue largely just stems to we don't legislate for the absolute minority, and an intersex person upon discovery, it's like, well, we can't. If you don't fit into the category we've provided for the overwhelming majority, then maybe a secondary category or something would make a lot of sense. Because if someone was born without feet, they're not going to be runners. We don't say like we're going to give you robot legs so you can run. That was actually the Oscar Pistorius debate because he didn't have legs, and so they were letting him use these prosthetics that people argued gave an advantage. He argued didn't, and it was contentious. Mm-hmm. And then he killed his girlfriend, I think, and got arrested for it.
The fair play guy, right? The like big question of fair play. Yeah, I mean, like I think when it comes to trans women in sports,
something I was trying to ask you earlier was sort of that too. What he's kind of touching on is that, well, how can you say that like in this one, like right now you're saying we should basically legislate for the minority, but then earlier
we always
saying,
legislate for the minority, just to be clear.
But you're saying
always.
Well, we shouldn't be listening
by and large,
to these.
That's what like most judicial criminality.
Yeah, but you're saying earlier, well, we shouldn't be listening to these crazy people that are like on the extreme left, and we should be ignoring them, and we should be like coming together.
Yeah, you should. Like for example, I guess I would say I'm sorry that the left got so crazy. Wasn't really my doing. I've only been in this industry for 3 years. I've always fought them. I don't like them. Why are you treating me like I'm them? I'm not a crazy leftist. I'm a reasonable liberal, and we are a growing group, a vastly growing group, because a lot of people are being like, yeah, progressives are kind of stupid. Like, they're a little cringe. And I agree. I've been fighting them my entire life. The issue is that I refuse that the alternative has to go, well, if it looks and feels that way, it is that way, except for when I don't want it to be that way. It's like, that's not a satisfying answer.
What we're talking about, though, is the minority. Like, there are not tons of Blair Whites and...
there's not a lot of trans people.
I forget his name.
Angel.
That looks like a guy, yeah. That's why they're like a unique case. That's why everybody cites them, is because they are the minority.
Here's another issue. Let's move on from this. the policies that you've espoused outside of like the transgender issue, many people on the right completely agree with.
I agree.
And so the issue then becomes reformer versus revolutionary, or are you lying? And so when you have, in 2020, I donated the max to Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, and I wanted sane Democrats to kick out the lunatics. Instead, they all stood there and raised their hand about opening the border, decriminalizing crossings, giving healthcare to non-citizens. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then they basically booted Tulsi Gabbard, and she still endorsed Joe Biden. Andrew Yang ended up taking a job at CNN, and once again, just trying to pander to the left. And so I was like, wow, who am I going to vote for? Donald Trump then came out and said the DEI stuff needs to be removed from government. I said, hey, I'm for that. He said, no new wars. I said, I'm for that. He said, we're going to set a timeline for withdrawal from Afghanistan. I was like, wow, these are things that I, as a liberal-leaning person my whole life, have longed for. I think this is the best chance I have because Joe Biden is lying about Trump's statements. The media is lying about Trump's statements. They're falsely framing what's actually going on. And Joe Biden is the guy who sold contracts for got his brother contracts in Iraq. This is military-industrial complex times 10. I'll take Trump. Then you come to 2024, and Donald Trump says, we're going to bring in Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Elon Musk. We're going to bring in a coalition of liberals to help lead foreign policy and economic decisions. And no new wars, blah, blah, blah. We're going to set peace. And I'm like, well, this is the most functionally appropriate thing to select, which I will.
But then he lied, right? Like
what?
Well, he's like, for example, the Gaza war rollout has exploded under him because essentially the War Council was having the brakes pumped on them super hard. I'm not sure how you feel about.
What does that have to do with like?
Trump is like Trump being anti-war. He is literally celebrating the idea of basically steamrolling Gaza and displacing all of the citizens with not even
the news.
Huh?
Have you been following the news on this one?
Yeah.
He recently came out and told Israel he was breaking from them. He doesn't want to be involved in their wars.
Do you remember why?
Iran.
What do you mean Iran?
To avoid a war?
To avoid a war with Iran. He said, we're going to stop supporting you because you're pushing too hard. Israel said they're going to engage in strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. And Tulsi Gabbard told Trump, don't do it. And Trump said, we won't. Tulsi Gabbard was excellent choice. Man, if we got Kamala Harris in there, holy shit.
And this brings it back to the topic, why are men leaving? I mean, we don't want to be fighting the wars. I mean, I think we realize who's going to be sent overseas.
I'll just kind of own. I'm not like
You know what I mean?
pro-war because I see war as like the most
I'm not
tragic,
saying you
evil
are.
thing. But I see war as an absolute
Democrats are pro-war.
necessity.
I will say,
and more
I think
importantly,
Democrats are more pro-war
They are
than they
pro-war.
let on. They like
agree.
to pretend. They
I
like to
agree.
do this thing where they're pretending that, oh, we're just, we're just doing our
and
thing here.
sweet,
Yeah,
and we
we're
just
nice
want
and
peace
sweet,
and
and then
love.
really we're
So-
fighting three problems.
I'll put it this way: as a liberal,
striking kids. So.
as a liberal, I see Donald Trump publicly going moderate on the issue of abortion, and he got attacked for it.
He did.
I see him rejecting DEI, which is a violation of the Civil Rights Act and illegal. And I see him bringing on Tulsi Gabbard for national security, RFK Jr. for health, and I'm like, wow. This is the first time I've actually gotten like liberal administrative policy in the federal government because Obama wasn't doing it. Obama was blowing up children overseas. So I have said numerous times, Obama should be criminally investigated, impeached, and charged for the killing of Abdurrahman al-Awlaki, and Donald Trump should be investigated for the killing of Abdurrahman al-Awlaki's 7-year-old sister. But Donald Trump, as an administration, is eclectic with much more liberal tendency than the Democrats offer. Again, the reason why I think young men are leaving is, for one, it's not just ideology. It's literally just conservatives had babies 18 years ago. So that's a big function of it. But what we did see is among the Gen Z that were 25 5 years ago and that are now, or I should say 24, and that are now entering the late 20s, we have seen an uptick in anti-LGBTQ, anti-gay marriage, pro-Jesus. So that shift has happened a little bit. And I think it's largely due to the fact that if you were looking at it objectively or pragmatically or rationally, you're saying, a vote for Donald Trump and the Republicans earns me a 10-point net positive, and a vote for the Democrats is a 10-point net negative. Yeah, I don't like Republicans on this, and this, but they're offering me that, this, and otherwise, and the Democrats are doing nothing. So I'll take Republicans.
I'm not sitting here criticizing the voters. That's not what I have issue at.
No, I'm just saying that's why they're moving to the right.
Well, sure.
Also, I think
The issue is
Christianity offers
they're all
purpose.
lying, right? My problem is that they're doing this based on this idea of they're all lying. For example, military complex. Okay, Musk just got several multi-million-dollar military industrial complex contracts, right, with SpaceX to develop a bunch of tanks specifically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Tesla also got some armored vehicle contracts. I don't think that this is good, right? For you to be so anti-military and war, right, he's been unable to stop the Ukrainian war, which we knew. Under his first term, he was doing multiple strikes.
Are you sure about this?
The Musk stuff?
The tanks, you're referring to like armored personnel.
Armored vehicles.
Armored vehicles?
Yeah. Tesla or SpaceX?
And maybe Tesla. Tesla tanks. I don't know.
See, I'm a Democrat and part of the liberal left. It's not hard to be reasonable. Because I'm a reasonable person. That you are, Maida. I very much appreciate that about you. Reason is value neutral. Kamala was down here recently. Shit was ridiculous. Oh, God. What was she doing there? Kick her out, dude. We should say N-word to Obama. You go for it, Conrad. You go ahead and do that. I feel like most people who act within reason should either land in liberalism or libertarianism, just as a result of being able to be, well, reasonable. However, a lot of people who end up in said circles do so out of political bias and tribalism. However, a lot of people who end up in said circles do so out of political bias and tribalism. Okay, yeah, I could see that. It's just that anything to the left or right of some of those circles are probably so fucking gate-kept and purity spiraled that they can't even get past the velvet rope, you know? Did it talk to a bunch of real estate people? Oh, yeah, a talk, I'm sure. Yeah. She got paid to give a speech. Sounds very fucking Clinton-esque. Getting paid to give speeches, that is fucking right up the fuck. That's right out of the Clinton playbook. Let's just start fucking bringing in that fucking cash. Which is important for those of us who get a bad name for being associated. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I wonder. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I wonder if like libertarian and liberal can be like associated in the way that you're doing it. I understand what you mean when you're saying that. But that whole "this is where you happen to land" concept, I think applies more to liberal, because I think libertarians are just like super ideological, because you have a ton of ANCAPs in there and shit. $500,000 to cackle like a bloody cow. Not bad work if you can get it. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's right out of the Clinton playbook. How do you think the Clinton Global Initiative was built? All of that stuff was, paid speeches. Paid speeches. Just fucking, what's the guy's name? Peter Schweitzer. He wrote the book Clinton Cash. My friends made a movie on it. It's fucking crazy how involved Clintons were, from the earthquakes in Haiti to Irish telecom companies to fucking African dictators and oligarchies. It's ridiculous. They were all over the map, dude. All over the map, getting crazy money. Crazy money. But I gotta get out of here. It's fucking 3 in the morning. I gotta be up in a couple hours for work. So, I apologize. It's just a weird short stream. I just needed to get on. I just wanted to get on here so I can get some work done. So, I'll be on tomorrow. Most likely, I'll give it like a 70% chance I'll be on tomorrow. And I don't got any hockey until Wednesday, I think. That's when the Stanley Cup starts, which my Florida Panthers are in for the 3rd year in a row. And we're playing the Edmonton Oilers, who we beat last year. It is so crazy to think that there's going to be an actual Stanley Cup rematch back-to-back years. And it's going to be nuts. So that doesn't start till Wednesday. So the next week or so is going to be weird with my streams just because I'm going to be watching a lot of hockey. But I'll try to be on tomorrow. Raid, yeah. Yeah, Edmonton's in it. Edmonton's in it again. We beat them last year, and now we're playing them again this year, which is ridiculous. Like, I don't even know how many times back-to-back Stanley Cup rematches have ever happened in the history of the NHL. I have no idea, but it is really crazy to think. Like, it's going to be insane. It's going to be insane because Edmonton is going to be really fucking pissed off and really hungry, man. So it's going to be really entertaining. If there was ever a time to watch some hockey, if you have never watched hockey before, watch the Stanley Cup. Figure out a way to get that cup on your TV, on your phone, and watch it, because I promise you it's going to be fucking awesome. It's so crazy to think that we're playing them again. They're going to be so pissed off, man. It's going to be real hockey. There's going to be a lot of fights, man. Raid Waterland? Who's that? I would, but I'm gonna raid Grumple because Grumple's only got a few people in there, so you can get some Grumple time. But yeah, I'm gonna start this raid. I'll probably be on tomorrow, so we can pick this up where we left off. I might be working tomorrow too. Just depends on how much I get done, later today. But we'll see. I'm not sure. Hockey playoffs are great because anyone can win. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you have hot tips, let Salty know. Oh, you mean on a team? Oh, okay, interesting. I'll let you know. All right, I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Conrad. Thank you, Salty. Thank you, Birdman. Thank you, XN. Thank you, Maida. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, guys. I'll see you later. Peace.